This is a case of an artist who's accused of AI, and the public is very on the fence about whether AI was used in their process or not. And this is the artist in question. They go by the name Juvie. Don't send them hate. Please, please. Okay. In cases like these, also, oftentimes there is no evident smoking gun. So we don't want to be dogging on people like that. There is a suspicion that Juvie's art has resembled some popular AI models. An example is this piece looking similar to these types of models, popular AI art styles, if AI could even an art style. Some more examples of their work, including this one that has now been deleted. Again, deleting pieces is always a 50-50 because some people will look at deleted pieces and be like, oh, this is proof that they traced or used AI, whatever. Sometimes artists will delete pieces for different reasons. Maybe they think the work wasn't satisfactory to their standards, so they want to delete it so that they can have artwork that actually represents how they truly feel their skill set is at currently. Sometimes it is to hide stuff. It does go both ways. So there's another deleted post. This is detailing on a moto jacket that is in one of the art pieces, and there are some elements highlighted of it being suspicious. Moto jackets typically will have like a bunch of like vertical, like kind of leather strap detailing going down. And in the vertical detailing, something turns sideways, which moto jackets often don't do. And there are funky kind of detailing in the buttons. This one is very funny because it's like two characters kind of like very intimately leaning into each other, except they're looking in like vastly different directions. One is looking straight out, one is looking down. I also do want to point out that this piece again has multiple eyelids. There are real people with multiple eyelids. Super real. I know people like that. My boyfriend's got uneven eyelids. It happens, right? That's not often a trait artists typically draw on their characters. Doesn't mean it can't happen. It's just not often drawn on characters. Typically, they draw characters with one eyelid. The photo also alleges that these are AI models that look similar to this piece. And more side-by-side of art pieces. So here we have another art piece that was deleted, examples of eyes that are still up, and some AI models that could be referenced. Again, I want to add, this is not a smoking gun, right? It's just something to think about because AI at the end of the day is trained off of human artists. Midjourney is trained off of like 16,000 non-consenting artists. So if you're an artist who just happens to have artwork that Midjourney is trained on, your art is going to look like AI because AI was trained off you. If you just happen to have an art style similar to the artists that were trained off that AI was trained on, you're going to unfortunately look like you used AI when you didn't. So it looking similar isn't necessarily a smoking gun. It's just a food for thought, This is the call out that was made about Juvie, posted by an account by the name of UFO San 7 weeks ago. It reads, I want to bring attention to something suspicious going on with Juvie. There's strong evidence that they've been tracing AI-generated art. Their speed paints, especially the Madoka Magica one, looks very unnatural. The process jumps from a rough sketch to extremely clean line art, including shadow lines with no signs of using tools like the lasso or masks. They render in small disconnected sections, and which is unusual. And here is another piece that was highly suspected of being AI that's now been removed. And they indicate there's inconsistencies in the character design. So another thing they point out is the difference in style, how on April 19th, a bunch of art was posted, and some of these have now been deleted. And 3 days later, the art improved drastically. They posted this piece. So this is an example, right? Like 3 days later, they posted pieces that look like this, that has a really heavy level of like posing and stuff like that. And then there's pieces May 11th, May 18th, and the post reads, the difference in style anatomy rendering is so extreme that it doesn't look like the same artist at all. That artists do improve gradually over time, but this massive jump feels suspicious. Now they break down other aspects of the character design. So this is their OC, and the OC has some notable elements, including golden long hair, 2 gray horns coming out of the head, 2 ribbons that come out from behind the gray horns, and this big crown and bell earrings. So they note that in some aspects or some of the artwork, the crown is completely missing. Sometimes the horns are missing. Sometimes the 2 big ribbons are missing. Sometimes all 3 are missing. And 2, in the bell is drawn in a funny way. And we'll kind of look at that. So this is the character design of the OC in question. So again, the OC has 2 long ribbons, the horns, the crown, the bell. This is the one where they're saying the bell looks odd because the cut in the bell, right? There's like obviously a gap in the bell so that when the inside shifts around, it actually rings. The center of the bell is just intersecting it, which is not how bell anatomy works. Now, benefit of doubt potentially could be that they just never looked at a reference photo for a bell, so they just thought that's how it looked like. It could be AI. Now, next is they added a Pokemon piece where the clothing from the character Raihan doesn't match up to the official clothing of the character. This doesn't necessarily mean that AI is used. It is suspicious. The thing about AI is that AI is not good at generating characters with complex outfits. It will tend to fudge it up. This is why when we've covered Genshin Impact fake AI art accounts in the past, they will typically make the Genshin Impact characters wear normal everyday clothing, like button-downs, robes, etc. Because AI can draw or generate a robe, a button-down. AI cannot really generate child's complete outfits because it's too complicated. There's too many moving parts. Typically, though, when an artist is to draw a character, they would look at the reference photo and then draw that. So they would get the character outfit correct. The straps of the clothing, right, are wrong. The hood is supposed to be orange on the inside with teeth. That's not there. The coloring is also off, but that could be an artistic choice to make it blue instead of like a gray black. Just some elements. Also, again, the character is wearing a hoodie with orange cuffs on the sleeve, and it's not really maybe it's this, but this is like super thin. So again, it could just be like a miss from the artist. They completely forgot about it. People say it could also be AI. And then the Madoka Magica piece adds that the sleeve is incorrect because the sleeve here, there's a band. There's an additional band, pink band here that is being highlighted on this piece. And in their old 2018 art, apparently they actually got it correctly by drawing the pink bands where they're supposed to be. That's again one way that AI will tend to mess artwork up by being unable to draw complex pieces correctly. I mean, I think one thing that's interesting, and maybe it's a lore thing. I haven't seen Madoka. So is there like a lore reason as to why this part of the skirt is just missing? Like most definitely like could be a lore related thing that I don't know because I didn't see it. And here they have their speed paint. The speed paints are what most people are suspicious of about their artwork because they do a base sketch, which is totally fair. And I guess it looks like it was intentional that like there is this cutout here. Maybe it's like something lore related about the anime. They do a really rough sketch and then they immediately start doing the line art as if they know where everything belongs. And they also immediately start coloring the character in with a heavy amount of environmental lighting when the environment isn't remotely blocked in. What I mean by this is like typically the way, not all artists, right? Every artist draws differently, but most artists, when it comes to drawing, when it comes to coloring their piece anyways, right? They will draw their character. I'm just drawing a person. So stick figure, okay, and then we're gonna give our stick figure person some eyeballs. They're just bald, sorry. They'll draw somebody like this, okay? And then they would kind of block in the environmental colors. Hypothetically, our person's underwater. Okay, blue water. Hypothetically, we add gradient up to the sky because it's water. We add in a little bit of environmental lighting. Oh yeah, right, like this. And then typically people will go back into the art piece. I say typically, everybody draws differently, and they will paint the environmental lighting onto their character. I don't know, paint something like a little bit of, we'll just blend this straight into the environment, something like this. We make it into a multiply layer, you know, to like blend the character into the water. And then I'm doing this with my mouse, so it looks real bad, but you might want to like give a little bit of a highlight on the head. If you really want to be fun, you could draw like, okay, this looks kind of dumb now. I'm trying to draw the like water ripples, you know what I'm talking about? Okay, doing this with a mouse is like turbo hard also. I hope the sentiment is there. But yeah, like water ripples on the head, whatever. Typically afterwards, or some part of the process, you draw both together. Okay, you draw a little bit of character, draw a little bit of environment, blend it together, da-da-da. You don't often see artists immediately knowing how to draw or color the character when the environment itself isn't colored in. Not often doesn't mean impossible. Some artists are the absolute GOAT and can do that. So there is a possibility, right? But yeah, but that is one thing they do, is that they immediately render the piece fully as if it was in an environment that isn't drawn yet. And they don't need to tweak the colors anymore after they draw the environment. Yeah, normally if you have a very high understanding of like colors, you still need to tweak it a little bit once you finish the piece. Like once you finish the environment, you got to add a little bit more. But there's no really like tweaking of the colors here. It's kind of just like adding fine detail. And this is their old Madoka piece. That was one of the aspects that was a bit suspicious to people. And you can kind of see a similar thing with like other speed paints they do. It's not a smoking gun. We didn't see them directly trace over AI, you know, but they upload like a sketch piece, kind of something like this. And then they have a speed paint where they do a sketch and they draw in the eyes. They basically immediately know where everything goes again, right? Like they draw kind of block in the head. They immediately, bam, right here is the eyes. We don't need to move it. We don't need to change it. The eyes are perfect. The mouth is in the perfect spot. The nose is in the perfect spot right out the gate. Then they do the line art and again, color in as if they already know how it blends into the environment. Again, definitely possible that somebody can draw like this. AI tracers also tend to do that. So UFO-san, going back to the piece, continues, another red flag is the gap between their final drawings and their actual anatomy skills. For example, in the Madoka piece, the base is drawn at an amateur level with several blatant errors, and the proportions are off and certain body parts are positioned that doesn't make anatomical sense, which makes it hard to believe the polished line art and rendering are due to a consistent, skilled hand. The final piece looks far more refined than what their anatomy would realistically allow. And then again about the sketching phase, they added there's a notable lack in tweaking in their sketching phase, and they highlighted the sketching phase of an artist by the name of Yonayama Mai, where rough sketches typically get adjusted by resizing, moving, changing a little bit till you get it perfect, and then you can fix it. Their sketch tends to be basically perfect out the gate. And they add that there's rough sketch matches the final line art really closely, and there's almost no visible construction, correction, or reworking, which feels unnatural. It's not impossible. Really good artists can do it. It's just you rarely see people work like that. There has to be some level of tweaking and adjustment that happens. So UFO stands for the Madoka piece. They notably leave the background color last. Normally, artists add color to the background first to help with understanding the levels, brightness, darkness, warmth, and coolness, but it's odd how they manage to render everything in a way that the lighting and ambience remains consistent even when rendering in really small parts. And there's no correction in colors of the proportions or the shading, as if the drawing is magically complete in one shot, even after hours of rendering. How do they trace? UFO-san speculates that part of the actual process could be invisible to the speed paint due to the fact that they draw in Clip Studio paints. From my knowledge, Clip Studio paint cannot hide layers. And UFO-san adds that the biggest red flags is the fact they censor the words trace and AI in their comment section, and that UFO-san reached out to them directly and they ended up getting blocked. You know that piece that was deleted? The piece that was the two people kind of intimately with their heads against each other? It's just suspect because we have a sketch. It is a boxy sketch, to be fair, right? It's a bit of a rough sketch. And then they immediately go in with the most perfect line art ever out the gate. And then they start coloring. It's suspicious. Again, I'm trying to play devil's advocate here. They do the paint by numbers type of coloring that some artists do paint like this, you know, oil painters do paint like this. People who have a background in doing traditional art do paint like this. But they're kind of doing like a paint by numbers where they're like painting in different values, different levels, and then continuing on. Just a bit odd. You don't often see people paint like this. Not impossible. But again, I want you to notice, they don't need to correct the colors at all though. They immediately have all the environmental lighting perfect. They have all the really sharp highlight on the back of the head perfectly, right? They're painting on a white canvas and they start with a really dark color for the face, which works out in the end because it blends in really well with the rest of the gray tones they're using for the character, because the character is pretty pale in the final piece, right? Again, they're just painting with a very high level of knowledge of environmental lighting when the environmental lighting isn't there. I keep saying it, and you guys are probably tired of me saying it, but people do paint like this. People who trace AI and pass it off as their own art also do this. So this is the grade scale of their work, but this is pretty damning. This is the final piece of the speed paint, right? And an artist sent this to me. When you overlay it with the actual work they've posted, it's a bit suspicious. This is the speed paint. This is the actual work. And here you can see Juvi's logo on the corner. It's not the same piece. You can see there's like tiny cuts. It's like part of the head was like cut and like reshaped a little bit here. It's not the same piece. Really odd. Because why would that happen? Why would the speed paint and your final piece not be the same? Maybe they rendered it more not recorded, but that would be odd because Clip Studio Paint, the way it records is it records in your art file itself. So if you did that, that means you have to get the file, download it, then reopen your file as a new file in Clip Studio Paint. So you get a second recording and then draw it there and then just never post the second recording. It's a bit odd. So a fair amount of artists gather as much information as possible to the suspicions of the piece. There's definitely a possibility that they just rendered it more later. I'm just confused about the part of why it's not in the recording. Maybe they downloaded the recording before they finished it and then rendered it more later, because I work in Clip Studio Paint. It like records on the file itself. So part of me is just kind of like, if you did draw your piece, you finished it 75%, save the recording. The way they do it is they post the piece and then they, on the like the next slide, they'll post the speed paint, right? So then they later finished the piece, posted the piece, then didn't post the full recording, but posted the one where they did 75% of the rendering. That's definitely possible. We're just looking at everything in the full picture as well, because I'm trying to play devil's advocate, right? Because like, hopefully it's not AI trace. Hopefully it's just somebody being falsely accused that we can like clear their name. That would be the best case scenario. The other one, people were suspicious because there's this piece and this is their original character. So Aethra, you know, the Aethra again has the long blonde hair. And typically with characters, you know, when you make a design, there's core elements that are part of your design that you keep in your character. You know, the horns, the 2 long hanging ribbon straps, the crown, and I would say the 4 dots on her face and the bell earrings. These are all very notable in her character design. It's a very pretty character design. Then Juvie goes to post this piece, which is missing a lot of the core elements. The horns, the ribbon straps, and the crown are all gone. And Juvie said, I forgot the horns, so I gave myself a headache in the caption. So yeah, it definitely is possible that in drawing the character, Juvie completely forgot the horns and the crown and the ribbons, or artistically chose to not include the crown and the ribbons and then just forgot the horns. Definitely possible. It was just one of the things that people were just more suspicious about. Like maybe some elements are removable. Maybe the straps are part of the crown and Juvie chose, okay, I'm not going to add the crown. I'm not going to add the ribbons. Another thing that was pointed out as odd in this piece specifically, this one has been deleted by Juvie, is the fact that this character, right? The ears are drawn differently for both characters and they both have elf ears. So again, maybe the artist was bored, right? Juvie was bored and was like, okay, I want to draw the ear this way for this character and I'll draw it this way for this other character. AI also tends to not keep things the same. So if AI makes an ear for one character, AI also will tend to mess it up on the same character. So if you can see both ears on a character, AI tends to make one ear look one way and one look the other way. Like in terms of the cartilage. Artists have free will. They can choose to make ears look different if they choose to do so. That is also something that AI does not get consistent throughout. So then we have this post made by a YouTube channel by the name of Umi. This is the same account that did the call out. This is just a YouTube video of it. This YouTube video is really, really insightful. They provide a lot of information, so I recommend checking them out as well. If you're watching on YouTube, it will be linked down below. And in here, basically, Umi covers basically the exact same points. We can summarize a little bit for what the video will cover. Again, I do recommend you check their video out yourself to kind of see their points. The first point that's mentioned is the big jump in quality from April, like, what, I think it was like 19th to April like 21st. So in Juvie's defense, Juvie argued that they were in school when they did a lot of the drawings and they weren't able to post because they're in school. So now that they're off, they're posting in bulk, which is why it looks like they progressed really quickly. It was because the art was done over the period of a couple months and then posted all in batch at once. The second point, again, their OC character having very core elements like the horns, the ribbons, whatever, just being different from piece to piece to piece, which most of the time, if you draw your OC, you keep those elements the same. Sometimes the ribbons will be missing. Sometimes the crown will be missing. Sometimes the horns will be missing. The Pokemon art was mentioned again. And point 4 was that the anatomy was different in the sketches versus final pieces. There's this element here where they said that this video highlights that it looks like the piece has 5 fingers because the way the hand is pointing like this, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. Either the thumb is hidden and there's 5 fingers, or it's like a really long thumb, maybe. Benefit of doubt, it could be this character's left hand. In this case, then this is the thumb that we're seeing, and it just looks like it's a finger, right? And then we have 4 regular fingers. So there is a thought there. Again, the main point of contention is the fact that the way the sketching happens, there's not very much, if any, alterations with the sketches itself. It's just out the gate perfect. There are artists who can draw like this. People who trace AI art also will draw like this because they're tracing, but there are genuine artists who can draw like this. The next point that was made was the fact that the background isn't colored in before the environmental lighting is added, which is what we're talking about with the Madoka Magica piece. Things get interesting because they did a live call. So here is the speed paint of the live call that's happening with a bunch of artists in this live call. And again, Jofa is Juvie on Discord. The couple points of the live call, they were texting back and forth, right? And to give Juvie credit, right? When you're doing a live drawing, being grilled by a bunch of people in Discord, I'm sure it's going to stress you out. And, you know, you might not draw perfectly or things are going to be a little off, whatever, because it's a stressful environment. And I do really want to acknowledge that. So Juvie stated that she drew from her mind with no references when being asked if there were references. And then an artist asked why all of a sudden Juvie is suddenly using the eraser and the lasso tool and stuff when in her speed paints, she doesn't use the lasso tool or erasers. And then in Clip Studio Paint, if you undo, it's not recorded. So Juvie states that they normally sketch in sketchbooks before drawing things digitally. Then people ask to see the Madoka sketches or sketches of any of the finished pieces that she tends to post on social media. And then here you can see the sketches are sent. So the Madoka sketch was up here, and then we have some more sketches. The Madoka piece is a little bit cropped off, but yeah. The artists in the call were like, wait, your sketches look really messy, which sketches do, but the ones you upload onto social media look very clean and not messy like these sketches look like. Also, take note of this, by the way. They were asking for like Juvie's Pinterest board. Take a note of the Pinterest board. So we have dynamic poses, potential background faces, and some furry art, other artwork down here, and references. This will be a point of contention down the line. So in this call as well, an artist offered to pay for a commission and have that commission drawn live, drawn in a style similar to this, which is something Juvie advertises as a commission they sell so that Juvie could be compensated fairly for their time. So Juvie says it could be possible, but that it would take multiple sessions. Artists chimed in agreeing that, it's totally chill, down for this, as long as you don't draw it when you're not live streaming, so we can see the entire process from start to finish and without a pre-made color palette. I'm guessing it's because they want to see how Juvie's thought process is when it comes to selecting colors, right? Because Juvie does work on an existing color palette. Again, nothing wrong with the existing color palettes. That's not the point of contention here. People are basically just trying to prove a negative, which is like trying to see whether AI was used in the process or not. So if you watch somebody select the colors themselves, then you can kind of better ascertain their level of color theory. You could make the argument that if somebody could render like this, a piece this heavily detailed, straight off the rip with all of the colors painted in, with no environmental lighting drawn in, that they must have a really high level of understanding of color and thus would be able to pull a color palette by themselves, potentially. This is where the piece was at as of May 29th, 2025 in the live call. So as you can see, this is kind of where they ended up. So basically in the video, they basically were stating that this is the sketch that they saw in the live call that was offered, but the sketches don't match up with the level of sketches they're showcasing on their social media because it goes from this to immediately beautiful line art, right? Whereas their sketches are really sketchy, which is how many artists, their sketches end up looking pretty messy. Again, some artists can draw off the rip, right? And this is the speed paint you can see for a piece like this, where again, they do a really rough sketch, immediately go into beautiful line art, and then immediately start coloring in with perfect environmental lighting. Pip seems like they're a substantially good artist, but they use AI as a supplement to take it to the next level, and they're afraid to admit that. That's my theory. That's my theory too, Pip. I really want to believe that it's genuine. I just need to see more. Right? I can't really fully make like a full conclusion on anything until we see more information. There's just not enough to go off of. Here is basically pointing out some anatomical errors in the piece that was done on live, with some arm lengths not really matching up, etc. Could be fair. To give Juvie credit, Juvie is drawing on a 40-minute live call with a bunch of people scrutinizing every brushstroke she makes. So, of course, there's probably going to be some errors, etc. And we should give some grace for that. But here, again, they're using the lasso tool, which they don't do in any of their other stuff. Now, this is where it gets interesting because in Umi's video, they're basically citing that Juvie allegedly used to have an alternate alias by the name of Dracui. Umi was told this by old fans of Dracui. So the Instagram account was deleted or deactivated, and there are a couple of evidences that Umi states to kind of like indicate this. So one is if we back this up, is the sketching style being similar. And again, similar sketching style isn't a smoking gun, right? People sketch in different ways. Many people sketch similarly. This is the old Dracui page. It could be human error, but the thumb is on the wrong side of the hand. Happens to the best of us. Sometimes we mess the thumb positioning up. I just thought it was funny. They have a sketching style like this, which they allege is similar to the current Juvie account. I do think one thing to note about the sketching style that does make it look more similar is that they tend to draw in the shadows in an interesting way. If you see kind of here, right? Like here, there's like highlights and shadows on the hair, and they kind of carve it all out, which some people do in the sketching style. There's the sketching process, and that is something that Juvie does as well. Again, multiple artists draw like this. The shadows, the highlights are drawn in on the sketching layer already. Shows they must have a really high level of environmental lighting knowledge and lighting knowledge in general, because they know exactly where the shading, the highlights, whatever are. Some more examples of Juvie sketching, and these pieces are a little bit hard to see because they're like more zoomed out, but Juvie will also do that too. I think the Madoka piece is the one where you can kind of see it. Yeah, do you see that? Artists do draw like that, but like, right here, you can see there's like, this isn't a crease or anything. It's kind of just like a shadow that falls on the shirt that gets blocked in the sketching layer as well. Some people just draw like that, right? The Juvie accounts, the Dracui account both draw like that. So this is the biggest smoking gun that Umi states, where the Dracui account has a Pinterest board link. The Pinterest account is a bit suspicious, because if you scroll all the way down, there are references to this piece that was then archived. And again, that's related to this piece here, where again, it's Juvie's piece.
Ever seen that piece before? Judy posted it around April 19th, 2025. Somebody who had called out Juvie before they became popular reached out to me, showing me everything they had posted on their highlight.
Yeah, so this one is a bit interesting. Maybe it's an artistic choice to draw it this way, but the hilt of the sword is not even. The left side and the right side don't match up at all. So that was one of the ones where people were like, this is looking very suspicious. Could be artistic choice. AI would also do that. They're also adding that the way the sword is drawn doesn't match up with the way the hand is holding it. Could be genuine artist error, possibly. And then that Juvie account deleted it. And this was when Juvie had under 400 followers. So then they go back to the Pinterest board, and this one is more damning. So they highlight the furry art here. Take a look at these three. This piece, and where did the last one go? This one, these three, this one, this one, this one. Those on Juvie's post about the furry are the same three photos that are used as the reference by Juvie. Playing devil's advocate. Pinterest is a public platform. Some pins are just really popular. So perhaps Juvie has a Pinterest board where they have all of these art pieces and they just happen to have the same three popular ones. They're again highlighting the same three characters that I featured in this piece. There's a whole board dedicated to this Pokemon trainer, which they did make a piece here. This one is the most damning one, because remember I said keep in mind Juvie's Pinterest board. This Pinterest board, right, where you have dynamic poses, potential background, and faces, these boards are the exact same on the Dracui account. That one's a bit damning. I'm out here trying to play Olympic gymnastics to come up with benefit of doubt, like alternate explanations. I can't think of an alternate explanation for this one. Maybe they're best friends and Dracui happened to add Jofa into 3 of their Pinterest boards as a contributor.
Holly moved to her current account after being outed because her Dracui account was not beating the
This is really damning, the Dracui account. Yep, we got here 4 fingers. We've got a sword with 2 swords, the sword into a sword. You could argue maybe it's artistic choice, potentially. Also, not to mention the fact that these fingers are massively longer than these fingers, which I think is pretty funny. Also, one thing that AI does is AI is not good at putting fingernails on people. It will put fingernails on some fingers, but not other fingers, right? He's got fingernails on 2 fingers and not the third. AI tends to do that. And then the ribs, I don't know what's happening with the ribs over here, right? Like, not ribs, right? These are like, if you're really jacked, you have like the muscle definition. It kind of looks like gills on the side of your body. It doesn't look like random creases zigzagging across your side. If you're capable of drawing pieces at such a high level, you can render this well. You can draw 5 fingers and get the muscling on the side of the body correct. This one's even more damning. Over here, we have a piece where we have a character with 2 left hands holding 2 different teacups and a tray. So there's like another hand involved in this because we see an arm here. And then we have the AI hair looping into other hair, bleeding into other hair, besides the wonky architecture in the back. Can you actually draw 2 left hands? Yeah. But like now we have a case of an artist with a really high skill level, capable of drawing and rendering pieces to this degree, making massive amounts of mistakes in their pieces. This piece has 4 fingers, wrong rib cage, 2 swords. This piece, architecture is uneven. We've got 2 left hands. The hair bleeds into the other. Like, it's getting suspicious. This one's getting mad suspicious. I feel like you can't really argue against at least these points.
Well, if all of this wasn't enough for you, well, a Juvie Trace live on Instagram, if you didn't see the first seconds of this video. Basically, on the Instagram live,
the video concludes by speculating that Juvie traced live on Instagram. So going back to the beginning of the video, what do they mean by this? There is something you can do where when you're recording, you greatly increase the exposure of the video. So if you have like really hard to see sketches, that I take Photoshop, I draw a sketch, okay? Like hypothetically. We got a bunny sketch. Theoretically, if you lower the opacity a lot, so you see it, you can barely see it. You make a new layer And then when you record with your phone, you just up the opacity on your phone so the lines don't show. And then I could draw over this and essentially trace it without you really knowing because I've upped the opacity so much. That is what the video alleges Juvie did in the Instagram live stream.
Without guidelines or anything like that.
So somebody took the piece and the live stream and then upped the sharpness and contrast. And there's weird sketchiness happening in the background.
I don't know.
Like if you see here, like heavily upped, there's a lot of lines and like basically like what looks like dirt on the canvas. This one is really interesting. So if we go here, this is like hard to see, right? This is the live stream sketch in question, where this is again where they really up the sharpness and stuff like that. There's again, you can see like faint gray lines going across the piece. This one is really interesting because there's the faint shadow of an eye patch here. The mouth you can really see. You can see the curve of where the smile line of the mouth should be, but that wasn't part of their sketch. This is like a gray line. And there's like another gray line by the ear. Maybe that's part of a sketch. I don't know, right? And in the final piece, there's a curve for the mouth and there's an eye patch. And people suspect that they were live tracing on Instagram. Again, I think the true final thing that would exonerate or like clear their name, because people to this day are still kind of like, is it AI? Is it not AI? Da 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 da. I think the true thing that would clear it up, honestly, is if they did a live stream fully completing a piece, because they did 2 streams, right? One, that private Discord stream. Then they did another stream, that public Instagram one. This is the video. The Instagram one is still up on their page. In both pieces, they drew a sketch and they didn't draw the finished piece. I feel like everybody's in agreement that Juvie knows how to draw. They have hands and they can draw. The dispute is not can Juvie draw. The dispute is just, are some of these specific pieces, like the Madoka one, using AI in some way in the process? At the end of the day, unless they post a full live stream showing their rendering process from beginning to end, which was probably going to be hard to find given the fact that, you know, pieces like this probably take a really long time to do. So it's not going to be possible really to do it in one sitting. There's always going to be that air of a what if, especially the Dryakua accounts and the very likely link between the 2 accounts from the Pinterest board. It's a bit suspicious. Hopefully they didn't trace AI. Hopefully it's genuinely drawn and not a faked process in any way. It's kind of like a limbo. I feel like as of this point, and I'm curious about your thoughts, I feel like there's still an air of a possibility that AI could have been used in the process just due to the lack of evidence substantiating otherwise. You know, we can always also err on the side of innocent until proven guilty, so we don't have a smoking gun necessarily. Just a lot of conjecture that kind of is like a little, a little side eye. On a complete other note, I was just going through Juvie's account again. What gun is this? This is somebody who's supposed to be holding a Glock, isn't it? Why are there 2 handles in different directions nonetheless? It's not even like an AK where you kind of like have the mag and then you have the handle, and I guess you hold both. This just makes no sense. Oh, by the way, there's no trigger in the gun. They have a finger where the trigger should be, and there's just no trigger. No, the Glock proportion is super off, by the way. It looks like it should be a revolver with the chamber here, but it's not. And okay, this is the thing when it could be like, we can give benefit of doubt, but at a certain point, there's too many benefits of doubts, you know, where it gets suspicious, right? Because again, you're telling me that in this piece, you forgot the trigger and you drew a gun with 2 handles or like a handle and a clip on a gun that doesn't have a clip. And you drew your OC and you just happened to forget a lot of key components on the OC's design. And you forgot that the cutout part of the bell does not intersect the middle part of the bell because you didn't look at a bell reference for drawing, even though you did it correct here. You just maybe forgot here. And you can paint with really good environmental lighting. And your line art looks perfect out the gate, no fixes, nothing. And you have a piece that you uploaded where the speed paint and the final piece do not look the same. Maybe you uploaded the speed paint earlier and then the final piece you uploaded later, but they're very different in like complete anatomy as well. Maybe it was uploaded earlier, like a 75% complete version. And maybe the Dryakua account has nothing to do with you, but you guys both like the same 3 furry art pieces that you guys pinned and then you reference in your art piece. And maybe the Dryakua person is also your friend that added you to those same 3 Pinterest boards as a contributor, which is why it shows up on your Pinterest account. Or maybe something is not quite adding up at this point. Okay, yeah, sorry. I'm going to another piece with a gun. We also have this piece where there's a gun, right? She's holding a revolver. Her finger's on the trigger, but the finger on the trigger is astronomically smaller than the other fingers holding the handle of the gun. I don't know how this happens. Maybe it was an accident and they forgot. Don't know. Did they trace AI for the piece? I don't know. I think they can draw. I do think AI was used at some point in the process. There's something else going on basically because there's too much that's off. The thing is, even in the sketch, the finger size is wrong. They just drew it wrong and they just ran with it. And the thumb looks kind of funky because if you grab the barrel of a gun or like the barrel of anything for that matter, like if you're referencing something, your thumb doesn't really look like that. But that's like neither here nor there at this point. Like at some point, it's a little too suspicious. And again, the final point that I'm making is that this isn't to say that artists aren't allowed to make mistakes, right? These are all things that could be genuine errors. It's just when they are able to render allegedly at such a high skill level, but almost every other piece has like a massive anatomical or something else error in it that is a bit suspicious for the skill level they seem or should be able to draw at. I always think the weaponry when it comes to guns is always interesting because AI is so bad at drawing guns. Like it's so bad when it generates weapons. Like the guns, swords, whatever. It just comes out looking mad wonky. And I'm not necessarily saying Juvia traced AI, but when people who trace AI use weapons in the piece itself, it comes out looking super jacked. So what are your thoughts about the Juvie situation? Do you think there was tracing of AI generated images, or do you think the images and the designs were completely original? I would love to hear your thoughts. And again, please don't send hate to them because at the end of the day, we don't have a smoking gun. We just have many a benefit of doubts and a lot of suspicion. We're going to talk about an artist by the name of Koya for Arts because they got caught tracing AI and the way they got caught is wild. Okay, we'll just go into this. I'm going to show you their art in a different way because everything now of their pages, everything has been deactivated, gone. Okay, but this is an example of their artwork. You can see they make very chibi, very cutesy style art. They tend to feature this red panda character a lot in their artwork. So here is an example of their art. Another example of their art, the red panda with a frog. Another red panda kind of like frolicking through some mushroom forest. They also do chibi art as well. So if you look at their artwork, their artwork has like a very chibi-esque style. But if you ever have seen AI chibi art, their artwork looks pretty similar. Here are some examples of AI generation for red panda chibis. Now, don't go generate this stuff on your own. This is already what Google pulled up. I'm only showing you this as an example to what people were saying about their artwork. Because people were basically saying that their art resembles the AI chibi style a lot. And this is what the AI chibi style looks like, roughly. Again, we have to take into account the fact that with chibi art, whatever, like any art in general, AI steals from human artists. So there is obviously a chance, a likelihood that a person actually made the artwork and AI stole from them, and then there's nothing you could do about it. One way that I could explain it is there was a Pokemon art contest where the artist was accused of using AI, but it's because the AI actually trained off the artist's work. So do you feel like that? So I do want us to take that into account. Now, let's take a look at some videos of their art. We have here posted by Throw Away a Table or something like that. And the video is titled More Evidence That Koya for Art might be using AI. I'm gonna mute it. Basically, OP is stating that they have inconsistencies in their art style where some pieces do kind of look like they were drawn by a person. They have errors that were made, whatever. Whereas other pieces that they've made looks really clean, really good. And it's kind of like, oh, the inconsistency is kind of odd. So we can see here, and they have a screen recording of their page. So this is what their Instagram page looked like, obviously, before being gone. This is an example of their artwork. They made a piece by Mimikyu, another piece that they've made. So this is a red panda-esque piece. They made some boba artwork. And what OP was also pointing out is the fact that in their old artwork, they tend to use a lot of this like shine. You can see here, this bear also has that sort of like shine highlighting detailing. And then for all the red panda pieces, or almost all of them, they basically have a very different art style. That shine is completely gone. The way they render is very differently. And again, look, people can change their art style. Just because you used to draw with like a heavy highlight and you suddenly don't, doesn't mean you used AI. But it's just suspicious that it's mainly only the red panda pieces that kind of have that, because you can see here, it reappears again. So that's what OP was saying. Here we have another person by the name of Paw Girl Mimi who posted this video that says Koya for Art doesn't trace AI in quotes. So one is the hands being wonky. The fingers are most definitely very wonky here. Again, if we give benefit of doubt, potentially some people, artists, everybody messes up hands. That's totally normal. If you trace AI, you might not have any knowledge of how hands are supposed to look like, and you heavily rely on tracing AI. So therefore, when AI draws hands all fucked up, you will too, because you were tracing. Here we have another piece where again the hand looks really wonky. As in, this finger and the thumb are really close together. Again, we could give benefit of doubt. Maybe they're just bad with drawing hands, right? Let's continue looking at their other art. They also do these human chibi styles. And here, one thing they're indicating that could be traced AI is the odd neck, as in the line art. It probably is really thick here, but really thin here. This one, I would say, is pretty... Again, kind of benefit of doubt, you know, people draw with different varying line weights. Here we have the red panda again, more indication that it's traced AI. So a lot of people were feeling like it was traced AI. You could argue it's circumstantial. It's kind of like this looks a bit suspicious, but maybe benefit of doubt, right? There's more because, oh boy, a bunch of people then started calling Koya out, making example videos on how it could have been traced. So here we have a TikTok user by the name of Crispy Taters. The caption reads, "How do those AI tracing videos look to an artist?" Now, you can kind of see the meme is that, oh, they drew a sketch so that it looks normal enough because, oh, look, I made a sketch and now I'm drawing based off of the sketch. So of course I didn't trace any AI because, yeah, I made a sketch. Yeah, I just did some line art, of course. Right? And this video is kind of memeing on that. This is what makes it suspicious. They're kind of blocking in everything. And this is Koya's art process. Now, obviously, this is not Koya's video, but before Koya deleted their videos, which I should have saved, man, but I was traveling, so I was busy. They draw like this. So they will draw like a cutout of where the shadow should be, and then they would color the cutout in afterwards with the shadow, which... some people do draw like that. You rarely find people draw like that, though. Very, very, very rare. Not impossible, though. Here we have another video by TikTok user floppy0. Caption, proof that Koya for Arts uses AI. And here, okay, I think I probably should have showed this video first, but this is an example of Koya's old speed paints. Did we see that? We can back this up. Look at how they draw in the eyes and the mouth. If you were to draw like that, where it's like an outline, you would have to redo it over and over and over again, no? Like, you don't get it perfectly on the first try. You might get lucky and a couple of elements, like maybe one eye is perfect on the first try, you get lucky with that. Not everything. Like, look at how they draw the mouth. How do they even do the frog sketch? They draw an oval and then immediately everything else of the frog is just perfect. Now, some people might argue, oh, it's a chibi style, so it's like simpler to draw. Personally, as somebody who does draw the chibi style, you do gotta redo it a couple times. You know, you might get lucky first attempt for like a face, but I don't know. Not like everything. I think this is interesting. You see how they draw the handle for the umbrella? It kind of looks like they traced initially to draw the umbrella handle and then realized, wait, it doesn't look right, and they had to redo it. So here's a new speed paint that they made, okay? Look at the speed paint. They draw in a sketch, then they do another sketch to like fake it. For some reason, they raised the sketch up a little bit, but didn't raise the original sketch. And then, wait, I'm so confused as to what's happening here. They made a sketch, and then another sketch, and then they made a third sketch that looks really different from the first two, but closer to how the AI art piece would look like. And then they refined the sketch again. Dude, nobody sketches like this. Like, normally when you sketch, you like refine the sketch afterwards, but you can still see the essence of the original sketch. This looks like they drew 4 different sketches slightly on top of each other in slightly different locations. And then suddenly the face becomes super different again. The caption reads, "They know how to draw, they just choose to fake the AI ones as their own." No hate to this person, they're clearly insecure about their art and resort to faking that they draw AI images so that they can feel better about their own art. And then here is another user. This is Party Shrimp talking about this, where the video caption reads, "Yes, this is AI, just not the way you think." Here you can see some more examples of Koya's artwork. Again, bottom left, we have that red panda walking through the mushrooms. But as you can see, some of the pieces look quite suspicious, especially this dog one looks very AI. So Party Shrimp writes, "I'll be using Koya's art in quotes because it's a great example." So here we have the wedding piece with the red panda and a panda. At first glance, this looks exactly like AI. But when you look closer, it looks human. The line art is wobbly and the colors make sense. As you can see here again, yeah, some of the line art isn't quite even, right? They have thin line art here, it gets a little thicker here. The caption reads, "It's still AI. I pulled this image from Google and I'm going to show you how I think Koya does this. It's easy to trace over the drawing and then add in a sketch layer when people ask for proof. Where I think they fool people though is with the coloring. Some AI tracers actually have a bit of skill they use when getting their coloring stage. That and the clean line art is what makes people confused. They can use this for proof by showing speed paints and layers. And here we have examples of some art layers. What makes the deception harder to spot is because a human is actively checking for indicators that it's AI and removing them. So some indications it's AI is the really yellowy tint. If you guys don't know, a lot of AI generated pieces make the art very yellow. weird hair, strange body proportions. Whereas with the faked hand-drawn piece, you can change elements to make it look more normal. Like, not picking a lot of yellow colors, for instance, altering hands so that you add one extra finger. This hand has 4, but you can draw in 5 fingers. So other things to look for are composition, misconstrued line perspectives, hands, and eyes. And they add, thanks for reading, guys. AI is bad. We have the nail in the coffin, guys. If you were skeptical up until this point, let's take a look at this. So from my knowledge, and I could be wrong because they've wiped everything, they had a VGen where they were offering commissions to draw a chibi version of you. And this is a speed paint they uploaded of an art piece. Don't send hate to the person. They likely had absolutely no idea. Whoa, 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 guys. What was that? What was this that we just saw here? And the caption reads, quote, Koya doesn't trace over AI images, end quote. And also this was posted by ShareBB. What is that in the background? Could this be an AI image they were tracing that they forgot to edit out of their speed paint? Oh boy. So if you were skeptical up until this point, they were caught red-handed by tracing AI with the piece in their speed paint. And as a result, on VGen, they were suspended for violating VGen's terms and policies. They've deactivated across the board on all of their social media pages. This one is honestly so wild because they tried everything under the sun to make it look like they legitimately drew their pieces. They tried everything. They tried faking the speed paints. They mixed it in with their actual artwork so that maybe you get a little confused, etc. And that's the end of that. Don't send hate to them. It's just absolutely wild that this situation, very up for debate up until this point, led to this conclusion. And the saddest part at the end of the day is the fact that Koya can draw. They clearly have pieces they've made legitimately. If you scrolled all the way back on down their account, you can see those pieces. They can draw. They have the talent to do so. They still, for some reason, resorted to AI, which is just asinine. It's one thing if you absolutely lack the talent to do so. That's still not excusable in my opinion. But the fact that you can do it and you just chose not to is even more asinine. What are your thoughts with the whole Koya situation? Honestly, getting caught because you toggled on the AI layer you were tracing is wild. This artist on Twitter called out another illustrator on Twitter for AI in their work and potentially in their VGen commissions as well. So all of this starts with this artist by the name of Zorax who posts this illustration and they just write Hermes. And this is the illustration in question where it's basically an illustration of Hermes kind of sitting on a block of wood or something like that. And this was posted September 3rd and it got 17,000 likes. Then this artist by the name of Lucid or underscore LuluCid underscore on Twitter quote retweets it stating, "Don't fall for AI assisted artwork." And that is what cracks this entire situation open. And again, don't send hate to either parties. So Zorax responds, "I respect the concern, but this piece is my own work. I've been building up my style for a while, so before accusing me of anything, I hope we're cool." And Lucid responds, "Many of the portraits you've done look exactly like Midjourney compositions. No real emphasis on the hands and minimally overpainted with texture brushes and smudges, especially the shape language on your metalwork. I would love to see proof that suggests otherwise." Somebody replied that they should have DM'd Zorax, but Lucid responds that Zorax DMs were closed, so they couldn't do that. Another commenter says, "It does seem inconsistent." Zorax on Facebook. And they have artworks that Zorax has posted on Facebook. This one is a really anime style sketchy cartoon piece versus this illustration versus this sketch and another illustration. There are also commenters on Zorax's site stating that they use Ibis paint textures to draw and that here are some examples of their pieces. In the comment section though, a lot of people were also like, yo, this callout is like completely uncalled for. It's not AI, you're just a hater. But then a lot of people started going through Zorax's artworks and they found some elements that looked a bit suspicious. So one Twitter user says, "I have one final doubt regarding something quite unusual in the drawing. And that is the lip of one of these pieces. As you can see, this is the character's lip. And there is a long kind of like triangular shadow that comes up above the lip that is the same color. So it's definitely not the philtrum, which is the divot that is between your nose and your upper lip. Some people have it, some people, it's not really prominent. Benefit of doubt, it could be a scar on the character's lip." The Twitter user also writes, "Just a bit more. At first glance, the color application is top-notch, but when you zoom in, there's no outline indicating it's metal, which feels a bit odd. And the strap feels like it should be leather or fabric, but the color makes it look like it's something polished. I think this one is just a bit interesting due to the fact that there is like a shine down here that looks like it's metal. I mean, if it's like a buckle of sorts, the buckle would kind of go across the entire thing, right? Unless this is the buckle. Another commenter adds, from her Facebook though, 3 fingers. And this looks to be a work in progress where you can see it looks like they're holding a knife of some sort. To me, this honestly looks like it's 4 fingers, right? Because we have 1 here and then 2, 3, 4 like this. No thumb visible, but the hand angle could hide the thumb. What I think is interesting is this hand, because it's the wrong hands. If you're holding your hand like this, the thumb would be on the outside, not on the inside. Again, benefit of doubt. Artists make mistakes all the time. You know, I get the hand positions wrong all the time. I'm sure you have. Everyone will make that mistake. This artist tends to make a lot of mistakes with hands, which is why I'm bringing this up. Another commenter writes, this is my personal curiosity, whether it's the same artist, but they draw ears so differently each time. Not even one is the same. Is this normal? Here is one illustration where we have this character's ear, and this ear has a strong divot kind of on the inside of the ear, like right on the fleshy part of the earlobe. And then another dimpling in here in the ear, which this is not common in ear anatomy, to be honest. Here's another person's ear. Wait, that is not even anatomically correct. I guess maybe it could be possible. Like, this one is just a bit interesting. Again, look, not everyone's like a studies anatomy like that. I was just a bio major, so I'm like maybe a little more of a stickler. The ear has like a prominent ring of cartilage on this part of the inner ear, and then it kind of folds into the conch area. And then there is this like other ridge, but this ridge here sits beneath this outer part of the ear. And here you can see the ridging doesn't do that. It's as if it's like connected and flush to the side of the ear where it's supposed to sit under. It could be an anatomical mistake, right? Ears are hard to draw. They're kind of funky sometimes. And it is true that person to person, everyone's ears are a bit different. Some people, the cartilage protrudes a little bit more, some people a little bit less. It's just interesting. And then it also looks like the ear splits here, which it definitely does not do on like anybody's ear. And here is another ear where it's again drawn differently. There's no like dimpling happening in the bottom part of the earlobe. There's no like second line of cartilage that comes in this way that you can see that second piece of cartilage comes in on this ear. Maybe benefit of doubt, this artist is so much of like a hardcore stickler to realism that whichever human they're referencing for this photo or this illustration, they draw exactly 1-to-1. So maybe the person they're referencing has a different ear shape, so they specifically draw it that way. One thing I do think is interesting is that this doesn't mean that somebody used AI, but AI has a tendency to make very pink, fleshy parts of the body. Like, it'll make the ears really pink. It'll make, like, if you're drawing, like, boobs, it'll make it really, really pink. Way more than, like, somebody's average skin tone will typically look like. This is a trait that is present in Zorax's artwork. It, again, doesn't mean that you used AI, but it is something that will be present in AI-generated works. Like, again, we have here, this person's, like, blushing. Their ear is very, 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 very red. This is what another commenter on Twitter writes, what is this? A phone with a needle. And that is in reference to this art piece, which features somebody kind of on the phone, and they're holding, it's like a really old-fashioned phone with like a coil. They're holding the bottom of the phone in one hand, which maybe there's a lore reason as to why it looks this way, but I mean, my family has a bunch of these types of phones. They're not this small. The body of the phone, like the base where you rack the actual telephone afterwards, is quite large because it needs to be able to hold the receiver. And if the receiver is this size, typically the bottom where it would hold it is going to be pretty large too. But maybe the hand is obstructing it. I don't know, right? What is really interesting is this item here. Is that a phone or is that a clock, right? The old-fashioned phones where you stick your finger and spin the number, because this most definitely is neither. If it was a phone, it would have 10 numbers on it, right? 0 through 9. If it was a clock, it would have 12, right? 1 through 12. But there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 divots in this. But it has one arm for a clock, right? It doesn't even have like both the hour and the minute hands. It just has one and 12 divots. And if you look inside the divots, it also makes no sense. Like, some of these divots are circular, some are oval in shape. Inside, there's nothing. There's detailing in here, and they're all different details, but these aren't numbers. So what exactly is this? And then there's just like 2 divots missing. If there were circles or dots completely around this clock watch thing, would it go all the way around? But it doesn't. But then there's also like a charm loop. It's like there's a piercing at the top of this thing. Doesn't make sense. Like, this detail in the art piece is just extremely odd. Another Twitter user writes, painted over work in progress. 6 fingers, 6 being the thumb behind the pointer finger. Insane art style, quality jumps between artworks. For comparison, August 11th versus 6 days ago. Yeah, this artist is fishy. So this was August 11th, and this was 6 days ago. Look, everybody has different art styles. Some people will have a sketchy style, a regular drawing style. They definitely look quite different. So let's expand a little bit more on the 6 fingers. There's this Twitter user who is defending Zorax, who writes, this is one of her works, and she would like a formal apology. Not only that, if you're an artist, you will know this time lapse is legit. So here we have the beginning kind of the framing. As you can see in the sketch, the character has 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers with a thumb that's not visible because of the hand position. It would be behind. And this is the finished art piece before final textures are added. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers now. And then this is with the actual final textures added. That same person reblogged on Tumblr Zorax's speed paint. And here you can see in the speed paint, like they're painting other things. They're drawing like funny faces and stuff like that to show like that they painted it themselves. You know, they're doing a lot of flipping, whatever. But look here. They just like confidently rendered in 5 fingers essentially. Well, they'll go back to do it, but right here, bam. They confidently rendered it in 5 fingers with a thumb that's hidden. Now, like I said, artists make mistakes. Humans make mistakes, right? Sometimes you literally just miscount the amount of fingers and you're like, whoops, and you don't realize till the piece is completed, especially in a case where one finger, in this case, the thumb, is hidden. So you're like, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, we're good. All right, keep going. Again, I just thought to bring this up because it's interesting that this artist can render to such an insane degree. They're dropping pieces that look like this, and they make so many errors with the fingers and the hands. Right? The thumb is in the wrong place. The hand is a backwards hand. Too many fingers. Because again, you can make the argument, maybe they were just careless and brushing through. A piece like this doesn't scream careless. A piece like this screams meticulous. So that's why it's just odd. So September 4th, Lucid quote retweets their original post, writing, the biggest indicators of AI is their metalwork. If you've seen any classical Mid-Journey prompts, you'll find an inconsistency in the logic of the metal. Random gold embroidery with no real design, random swirling in the shape language, jewels that coil into gold, etc. So here is a close-up of what looks to be a sword hilt they've drawn, where if you look closely, it does look really, really elaborate. Yes, what is exactly happening? There's an emerald that's set in a setting, but it's not set in the middle. And of course, like, you know, asymmetrical looks are really popular nowadays. It just is a bit odd because the language doesn't make sense. Like, there's like droplets kind of coming out of the gold. A lot of swirling happening with the metal here for some reason. This piece, when you look from afar, it looks super detailed, But then when you take a look at the detail, there's like 2 different types of detailing. With like classic painters, a lot of times they'll add like a couple brush strokes, and from afar, it might look like a diamond. But when you look close, it's literally 3 dots, you know, that like together work together. It makes sense when you get up close. And with the detailing in this piece, it doesn't make sense. Right? If you look at the collar of the clothing, it's not symmetrical. The detailing on this collar, which it's like a loop and then a U and then a dot and then another U and then a loop and then a really much bigger loop and then kind of like a 3-ring thing going on. It doesn't match at all on the other side. And then there's a fancy detailing here and some metal work happening. And then you look closely at the metal work and the thickness is very uneven. The logic behind why it looks like this also doesn't quite make sense. More close-up of the metal work of the pole or the pillar it's holding, where again, it looks really detailed. And you look at the details closely and there's a gold pearl and then 2 more gold pearls that are a bit offset and then what looks like a head here. And then there's like detailing here, but it's not symmetrical all the way around. Like the further example I'm trying to make is like, you know, this is an example of a golden decorative pillar that would go like inside or outside a home. It is very elaborate in the decorations, but the patterning does make sense. There is some sort of symmetry to it, etc. Doesn't mean you can't use asymmetry in your work, but it's just not as common to find in things like pillars, like poles, staffs, etc. And even if it is something like this, right? Here's another pillar where there is asymmetry going on in the detailing. There is still some rhyme or reason as to the shape that it's taking. And I do agree with Lucid in that a lot of the detailing on this pillar specifically is a bit unclear. In expanding a little further on this piece, which is why I think this piece in specific just looks so odd, is that this is like a OC from Zorax. Zorax is the author of Dreadwatch, which is, like, from my understanding, a fan comic of Warhammer. The detailing is just a bit odd as to what's happening. The head is tilted down forward, which, of course, if your head tilts down forward a little bit, you know, any dangling elements would then dangle away from your face to match. But the beading that is hanging from the hats doesn't match the dangling of the head. This is coming like outwards. It's essentially kind of defying gravity a little bit. And this is coming again outwards. It should be kind of like straight, perpendicular with the ground. And again, you could be like, the artist makes mistakes, whatever, but the rendering is of such a high degree that this level of, detailing, I would assume that would be caught. The other one is the hand. This one is really funky. Again, another hand thing where they're holding the pillar, but between two fingers. Not even. I don't know how they're holding it, right? This is like a glove, right? So this looks to be one finger, two fingers, three finger. It is just inserted into the hand. Like if you're holding a pillar, wouldn't you hold it this way? Not one of that thickness anyways, not like this. Or like this. This just looks uncomfortable. And then again, the asymmetry in the clothing. There could be a reason for some asymmetry, but it doesn't make sense because this character is wearing like a very high collared article of clothing that's very elaborate in the detailing. And then there's like another collar that peeks out from under, but it only peeks out from the right side of the character and not the left. And then the character's wearing this like larger white jacket, except the white jacket has a double lapel, but only on the left side of the jacket. Shouldn't there be an associating matching lapel on this side? Because this asymmetry just doesn't make sense. Is this character wearing 1, 2, 3 layers of clothing? 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of clothing? Or 1, 2 layers of clothing and this is somehow connected? And also the folding of the clothing doesn't add up. This lapel is folded outwards, but this lapel is folded inwards and basically completely straight up as if it's one of those like stiff collar jackets. Doesn't add up to me. And then again, we have another element, like I mentioned before, is common in AI work, is like pinkening of fleshy parts of the body. Sorry, there's a better way to word that. I know there is. The nose is really pink. It's like a very, very reddish nose. Maybe this character is out in the cold, so their nose is really red, but it's like the same thing as the ears, where the ears are really, really red. This is just an interesting design choice to make. That's all I'm trying to say. This is another one of their art pieces, another piece for their comic Dreadwatch, and this was posted June 19th. So this is of a character shooting a bow. Now, I've shot competitive archery for 7 years. I shot Olympic recurve, competed in the US, trained at the Olympic Training Center. This is a style of bow called bear bow. It's literally just like a stick and there's an arrow on it. I completely understand if you don't shoot archery, you will have no knowledge of the technicalities of archery. It seems easy. You just pull string back, let go. There's a lot of technicalities to it. Completely understand. I would just assume that if this is something that you lack a technical understanding in and you're trying to do like a full illustration for, then you would just look up references. Because if you do look up any references for archery, you would find out you don't actually pull the string back like this because they have the thumb and the fingers kind of pinching the string. If this were the string and this were the arrow, you pull it back this way. Three fingers on the string, thumb kind of making an okay like this. You hold the arrow between your index finger and your ring finger like this. You don't grab it like this. You won't be able to pull it back. On a complete side note, it will fall off. This is hard to do with a knife. The hand that holds the bow definitely doesn't hold it like this. You can see the arrow is going in between the index finger and the finger below it. Just anatomically, that doesn't make sense because if you're holding the bow like this, the arrow goes on top of your hand when you're shooting because the arrow has feathers, right? So if you put it in between your fingers like this and you shoot, 1, you're going to injure yourself, and 2, the feathers are going to hit your fingers when it comes out, and you're going to be extremely inaccurate. So you shoot with it on top of your hand like this. Every style of archery shoots like this, on top of the hand. You don't shoot in between like this. Which, again, if you don't shoot archery, I completely understand that you wouldn't know this. This is just confusing. Because somebody who renders to this level, I assume, would look up a bunch of reference photos, right? You could be an absolute god and pull it straight out of your head, but even professional artists would use reference photos for something they're not familiar with. So it's just odd. And then it is even more odd because if you look closely, it doesn't actually make sense. Because once again, the fingers are wrong. I'm using this with my mouse, right? But this is the character's thumb here. And then we have a finger here. And then we have a finger, but then that would make this finger like really long. What exactly is the character holding? Because the string, as you can see, the string is this like clear line you can see right here, right? This like clear yellow line. So you see the string goes here and the string is coming this way, but there's an extra detail. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but there is this like brown thing. And you might be like, oh, well, that's the arrow. Then why is the arrow going underneath all of these fingers? Because this brown thing, if this was the arrow, would imply the arrow is somehow going underneath the bowstring, which anatomically really makes no sense. And then what is this brown thing here? Are these the arrow feathers? Because that's not how it looks like, right? The arrow feathers would be somewhat like up like this or something. It would kind of come out like that. And then there's this brown thing up here. I don't know what that is. And then this part gets funky too, because here we have the arrow, right? We have the arrow with like a broadhead, I guess. I don't know. Not really how arrow tips look like, but the arrow's just gone. There's just a tip and there's nothing else. You might be like, well, this whole thing is the arrow. One, well, that's really thick for an arrow. But secondly, then the arrow is intersecting into the grip of the bow is not possible. And if it were intersecting into the bow, then that means the trajectory of the arrow shaft goes this way when like your backhand is over here. So your arrow needs to go this way to where your backhand is so you can actually pull it back. So the angle of the arrow is also completely wrong. And then also, this finger is very odd to me. The index finger is curled. Imagine a bow grip is really thick, okay? It's not like a pen, but even to grip a pen and curl your index finger around the grip of your pen to hold it like this is just very uncomfortable. And the bow grip is pretty thick. It's like that. So you feasibly cannot grab it with your index finger curled like that. It'll like jam your finger. So that's why this whole piece is just very odd to me as somebody who does shoot, because the anatomy is completely off. And then if you think a little bit more into this piece, this is supposed to be the quiver for the bow, which holds the arrows. There are no arrows in this quiver. There's a circle, another circle, something that looks shaped vaguely like this with a hole in it, and something like this. And also, sorry, I don't mean to like draw over the piece to be disrespectful. I'm just trying to show you the shape language of what is happening in it to show, hey, this doesn't quite look right. Now, this is a fan piece, right? So maybe their OC doesn't have arrows in their quiver. Maybe they wield something else and they're shooting like magical arrows. I'm really pulling at straws here, but it just doesn't make sense. Or maybe they shot all the arrows so their quiver is empty now. And then in that case, why is their quiver in a box? And there's like a flag behind them, like this thing. I just find everything about this piece to be off, including the finger lengths again, where the final one is if we go over here and we look at the fingers, right? We have, you know, a finger, it's bent, this finger is curled. We have a really long pinky. Maybe it's just perspective because the hand's really close to the camera. So that was a big diversion, but going back to Lucid's thread, Lucid adds, here are some actual AI generated works from Xiaohongshu as a comparison. So we can see AI pieces where again, when you look at it on first glance, wow, this is so elaborate. And then you look at the like story or the details and it doesn't make sense and things don't add up. He's smoking a cigar, but it's not even in his mouth, but it's somehow also floating on one finger. And again, this is the like staffage or pulls with no rhyme or reason. Another example, I don't know why they're all smoking, but we've got the funny hand things going on. This one is funny because the fingers are really thin for the hands. Another character, again, super highly detailed till you look a little closer at the details and then like the chain is like intersecting with the jacket detailings. Another piece that's very highly detailed with metal, a lot of metal in this piece. And then the metal also has no story to it. Another commenter adds, agreed, here are some dead giveaways as well. Lower res hair loop. Gun with no trigger, but low res nonsense. Illogical metal, no symmetry, bendy merges weirdly. So this is one art piece with a hair loop. To give benefit of doubt, this hair loop could be caused because maybe the artist is making some strokes on the canvas and it just happened to loop like this. This piece is another really interesting one because there's, again, elements of it that just look suspicious to me. Maybe it's an art style thing, but they once again have like pinkage, right? The ear and the nose are pink relative to the rest of the body. It's just an interesting design choice. Here we have a gun, right? This is the spot for the trigger. And for context, this is an English long-barreled rifle, one of those like really medieval long ones, which I assume this is like based off of. Here's another one. You can see closely where the trigger looks like, right? There's a trigger and it's kind of just like a bend like this. What is happening here? Like this is not shaped properly. Also, look really closely. This is the outline of where the trigger is supposed to be. It's set onto the side of the gun. Like the depth perception doesn't add up. But I digress. This is not the trigger. And then, do you see this though? There's these like little elements here that look like they're cosplaying a trigger. Like all this stuff that's happening in here. None of those being the actual trigger itself. Which this to me gives AI vibes because AI tends to like generate stuff that it thinks is correct when it's not. Because AI thinks, oh, this should be a gun, so there should be trigger things here. It just puts all these little lines because it's just generating pixels. It doesn't know what it's actually doing. And then again, there's metalwork. And then you look closely at the metalwork again, it doesn't add up. There's a leaf here and another leaf here and more leaves. Haha. And then something loopy here. And then something that like snakes all the way around this way. That's just odd. Another one I want to point out are the buttons because none of the buttons look the same. This button does not look the same as this one. This one has like a little like conch shell looking thing going on. This one has like a ring around it. And this one is completely different with like a very, very, very thin trim around it, which also looks different than this one because this one has like 2-3 rings going around. Oh, and then sorry, it also looks different than this one because this one looks like a hat. So I'm just confused because I would assume if you could render to this level, you would make all the buttons the same, unless there is a design choice in the clothing, a reason as to why it should not be the same. But this doesn't look like it was an intentional reason to make the buttons look different. I'm also not sure what this fluffy thing in the middle of the chest is supposed to be, but maybe there's a reason. But the OP pointed out, and this I agree with, there's like ribboning happening here. And the ribbons just disappear. You see this? This ribbon comes down, curls back up, and it's gone. And then we have one ribbon that melts right into the ribbon behind it. And then more ribbons, but this one is really, really thin. It's like when you have those really cheap ribbons that you can actually rip them down the middle. And then here, this is interesting here. This, do you see this? There's brush strokes that look like they're ribbons, and then more loopy brush strokes. And this person's eyes are different colors. Maybe there's a lore reason for that one though, right? Because I did not read the fanfic. But other commenters feel like the brushstroke-esque aspect of the artwork is proof as to why it's handmade. This commenter says, this would work if it weren't for the fact you can see the individual brushstrokes, the use of the same brush throughout the piece, and human errors AI wouldn't make. You can see the stray brush splotch, and the same brush is present in other areas. So this is kind of like a little textured brush. You can see there's a texture here, and there's a random one that appeared kind of in the background. So you can see it's kind of, it's as if the artist accidentally touched the screen, which I do agree with, yeah. But a commenter makes this point, which I do see. They say they didn't say it was entirely AI. They said it was AI assisted. But there's this post that is very interesting, where the poster writes, I feel that the art they posted doesn't look entirely genuine. I'm not accusing them of AI, but based on various details, it makes me wonder if they might have painted over AI. The earring and the sword hilt there are still small details left they didn't fully paint over. This is the video. And because this is a work in progress that was posted by the artist, where you can see here, this is the completed piece. This is the one with the pole that is going through the guy's hand. This is just flipped. But you can see the detailing hanging off the hat. It's pretty like intensely jeweled. And in their work in progress, they painted it over, but you can still see tiny details of the jewel peeking through. Same thing here with the pole. You can see tiny details of the pole peeking out here and here. So what this commenter is saying is that maybe the artist could have generated an image and then painted over the image and like faked a work in progress by painting some parts of it over like this to make it look like it's like hand painted when the work has already been done. On a complete side note again, you can see the orange nose in comparison to the rest of the guy's complexion. But this is interesting too. You can see here, right? Even the lapel of the clothing, the white is peeking through. I think this is pretty damning. So Zorax quote retweets it saying, deadass funny how I couldn't even do what oil painters do and paint over their mistakes when they don't like it now, or else it gets called like I'm painting over an AI image. Damn. If I actually did paint over an AI image, I would have hit it better. I'm actually not that blind. I think that's interesting. Painters do paint over their mistakes to redo it again. That is very true. This person, from what people have stated, draws an ibis paint, not on a canvas. So you could just, I don't know, delete the layer that has the earring and start over. Now you can make the argument, okay, what if they work in one layer? I find that a little hard to believe because they render to such a degree. Maybe if they came from a traditional painting background where they're used to working on one layer, then they're not familiar with working on extra layers, so they stick with that. From what I have seen, do not seem to have a background in oil painting or any other sort of traditional painting, or at least they haven't posted or alluded to anything like that. So I think it would be kind of interesting to work in the same way that oil painters and acrylic painters work in, when you don't work in that media or you haven't worked in that media yourself, because there's just such an easy way to go around it, which is just, I don't know, go to the earring layer and delete it. But secondly, so then you want me to believe, right, that you painted the earring and that you painted over it because you didn't like it. This character has 2 earrings and this other one is not present here. So you want me to believe this character has 2 earrings, the right one and the left one. You fully rendered the right earring, didn't put a single splotch of paint for the left earring, and then decided, I actually don't like it, and you paint completely over it. Okay. But then what about the other parts, right? Like the part of the pole that pokes through, or the lapel of the shirt. So you fully painted one earring, almost the entire pole, and most of the jacket, and then decided you didn't like any of it, and you painted over all of it again. Could be possible. Highly unlikely, though. Oh, I forgot to mention, here, the hat. The bottom of the hat is also visible here. And this is a YouTube channel called Painting Portraits in Oils with Arthur Gain. And of course, everybody's art process is completely different. But if you do see, like, this piece from this YouTube channel where they're working in oils, you typically would also see, like, a progression of the piece together. Like, if this is your method of painting, I could be wrong, right? God knows I haven't painted in so long, but like if we skip through it, you can kind of see like the pieces like building up together. Like here we go from the face is completely rendered and nothing else is. Some people do work like that. But like, what are the odds that you fit every quirk? you know, where like you do work in a digital program, but you just happen to paint like a painter, and you also conveniently happen to mess up fingers and hands a lot, but you can render to this degree. And you also happen to make the nose and ears really pink, which AI tends to do in illustrations. And you also happen to have a piece where you messed up the pole, the jacket, and the earring and only painted one earring and painted them all over again to redo it, but you posted it as a work in progress online. And you happen to have a guy in a jacket and all the buttons don't match, and the guy has a gun with no trigger, which AI tends to do. And you also happen to have a guy who's shooting archery and nothing anatomically about the bow matches up. It's just a lot of coincidences, a lot of coinky dinks that, like, you know, one-offs, again, you know, all artists make mistakes, a one-off little anatomical error, no one's gonna bat an eye. But when all of this combined together with an insane god tier level of rendering, it's getting a little funky. And then under the quote retweet, somebody asked, could you explain why your sketch shows a normal number of fingers, but the final piece has unusual ones? So here again, the sketch has 1, 2, 3, 4 fingers, and it kind of like the thumb here. And then here in the final hand, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers. And the thumb is hidden, so it's actually 6 fingers, right? Zorax adds, no worries, I understand your concerns. This was my mistake. Also in the drawing, the fingers and the long thumb. I sincerely apologize for that. If you see the speed paint, you can see me adding the other finger in later. Also, I confirmed it's 5 fingers, not 6. Where is the extremely long thumb? If your hand is resting like this, right, your thumb is gonna be on the inside of your hand, not the outside. So this is not the thumb. That would mean this is the thumb. It would look like this, right? I'm trying to match the angle of the hand. I'm going the wrong way. So either you mean to tell me that you anatomically cooked it, and this whole thing is a giga-long thumb. I don't believe you. I'm not dumb. Because, come on, you're telling me you can paint like this and you accidentally made a super long thumb? Or this is supposed to be the thumb, and then once again, you got the hand orientation wrong. Come on, man. I just don't believe that. I really don't. If it was a one-time thing, we could excuse it, but the hand errors keep happening. There's like so multiple pieces with like very, very cooked hand anatomy to where it's just odd. And then another commenter for the phone clock thing asked Zorix to explain that, and they just never responded. So September 6th, which is today, Lucid made a full thread writing the AI accusation against Zorax, backed by Twisted Fae, Tried Kiss, Eternal Star, It's Chenzilla, Wendy's, Ali Archer, I Like Carpet, sorry, that's a funny name, Atrophy, where here's an AI checker and it flagged the piece as very confidently or highly partially created by AI. So Lucid adds my claim. I'm a firm believer that Zorax is using AI to assist their works. Where Lucid writes, I value transparency above all. I am one amongst a history of accusers. There stands to reason there would be some suspicions. I have nothing to gain from the stance other than pushing for authenticity in art spaces that I admire. I believe certain mediums are not made equal. While AI can imitate a process and a product, it's a disservice to artists who've done the hard work of studying, failing, and growing. My claim. I'm a firm believer that Zorax is using AI to assist their works. I believe in some form or fashion they use generative works and overpaint the images with texture brushes or smudges to alleviate suspicion of AI usage, going as far as faking work in progress and progress photos. Additionally, they've used these doctor images for commissions, thus profiting off of what essentially is deceit. Many have come forward in my DMs, their own fans, artists, and peers, to share evidence supporting my claims. I understand there are a few this statement wouldn't matter to, dismissing the evidence as fraud. So don't take it from me, but the other qualified artists with years of experience who are skeptics of the work, which are listed already in the first tweet. If you have respect for any sort of artist, don't support this behavior. I understand that people can't distinguish advanced AI art or few, which is why I've tried to shed light on the situation. To be an aspiring artist, resorting to AI and passing it off as real work, I consider such actions a detriment to the craft. I like to make it known that Zorax has yet to provide evidence to suggest their work is not AI influenced, referenced, or overpainted in any way, such as a speed paint without suspicious cuts, or a full file to show workflow and creation process. They also avoid posting speed paints on Facebook, all of which is behavior common to AI artists. Here is some evidence provided. It's clear to me they have some sort of art education and not all their pieces are AI, but it becomes apparent between 2024 and 2025. You can debate this is extreme and expeditious growth, but any credible artist I know would refute that. It's almost impossible to make this kind of progress in a year. Substantial growth is shown through drafts and process work. If the artist is unable to procure transitory studies, the growth is even harder to believe. 2. Textures are easily replicated and are overpainted on top of the initial AI painting to achieve a traditional effect. Here is an AI work smudged to look like a work in progress. And this is the full kind of like work in progress piece, which again, when you take a closer look at this, this is just odd. The brushstrokes painted as part of the painting process. Again, kind of using this YouTube channel painting with painting portraits and oils, right? This is like the start of like a really, really choppy, blocky piece that you then build upon, right? All in one layer because it's done on canvas. This to me looks very suspicious because there's no like shape language in how the brushstrokes are blocked. It's not kind of like, oh, here's arm, this is gonna be the arm, like blah 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 blah. Here is like jacket, da da da, like some sort of shape blockage happening that you can see with this, you know? Okay, we have hair, shape of the side of the face. Oh, this is going to be the divot that forms the left eye, or like concave that the left eye will go in. That would make sense. This is just abstract. Lusa continues, it's not common that texture is used to substitute or mimic a real painting. This can be done in real life, and it's considerably easier through digital format. For example, a video on, quote, how AI tricked the world's largest painting competition, end quote. Because gold is so structured, it's difficult for Gen AI to translate coherent forms. If this is supposedly to be an old rotary dial, there are typically 12 slots. Here they merge and diverge into a clock hand. And the buttons, that kind of design isn't usually made through human error, not with the wealth of technique shown everywhere else. Exactly, we have the mystery clock with 17 dials in it, and buttonage. There's like a little tag on the clothing, which is interesting. 4. Stylistic differences should still translate over to fundamental understandings, like anatomy, perspective, etc. There tends to be a clear disparity in sketches versus paintings. Why is that? Here is their sketch, with the anatomy being kind of like choppy, which is totally fine. It's a very like expressive sketch with like another missing finger. And then we have this full on painterly illustrations. And then once again, we have this, right? This was the chibi-esque sketch. The hand with 6 fingers is from a heavily edited speed paint they've offered as a rebuttal. However, the cuts are suspicious. The iconography is inconsistent, another flaw of AI. This was again the hands, where let me remind you, they said this is a really long thumb. On a complete side note, the oopsies, it was a really long thumb is the most absurd defense to me, personally, because like if you make the thing, oh my god, I accidentally rendered 6 fingers instead of 5, right? People will still think it's sus, but they'll be like, oh, okay, we can kind of see that line of thinking. This is a really long thumb literally makes no sense because anybody, I feel, with this level of rendering ability would never make a thumb that looks like a finger. Again, more of the detailing, right? So we can see here, this is what I was pointing out, all the freaking buttons are different. 6. While this isn't conclusive evidence, the same thumbnail and overlap suggest overpainting and photo bashing. They heavily reference without crediting the original artist. Here we can see that's looking a bit rough. This is one of Zorax's pieces, where it's kind of like half of somebody's face and the rest is like rotted away. Interesting. Lusa continues, AI testers are not foolproof. However, some of Zorax's images in isolation are picked up by the scanner. Some AI artists can still bypass this method using glazing techniques and overpainting. Their own clients are voicing skepticism around commissions priced at $500. They have not received clear files without backgrounds, sketches, or speed paints. I'll make the same point about AI details and gold. It's all incredibly unintentional and haphazard. This is not a quality you would want in character designs, where the point is to design with clarity. So here is a character, very painted. By the way, this character is missing the back foot, and that is completely true. When it comes to character design, the whole point is the design part, right? So like somebody should be able to look at your ref sheet and whatever and be able to replicate it. And if I look at this, I would not really be able to replicate it because a lot of the detailing are too fuzzy. Is this a skull at the base of the neck or is it part of the clothing detail? What is this chain connected to? Is it connected to this drapery here or this part of the draperage up here? Is there a close-up of the lantern? Because the lantern looks cool. Another character design piece. The other hand is missing. There's no full visible detailing on the back foot. A lot of just the elements in general are quite unclear. Another element or another character design that is quite unclear, where we once again have some funky looking fingers and back legs that are completely missing, as in they're like completely blacked out so the detailing is not visible. Through Zorax's fan, it was brought to my attention they've also hosted art contests with prize money. I was told by the person none of the contestants have yet to receive their prizes 8 months down the line. I can't say it with certainty, but is that not also indicative of deceptive behavior? So here's this person apologizing for the way they spoke and how they're thinking about the prize money, and they link the contest, and here are some examples. Lusa continues, I don't fault people for being deceived. I made a pretty impulsive claim that seemed obvious to me and my peers. I hope the evidence is enough to help you make your own conclusions. I don't want anyone to harass this person. Please stick to rationale and evidence despite their defender's temperament. I believe in growth and that they can learn from this so long as they remain transparent and apologize to their clients. Thank you to the DMs and the silent support. This would not be possible without you. Another commenter adds, seeing Zorak's claim of it being oil painting technique has really irked me. So here's a breakdown from a technical standpoint. Not even how it's clearly overlaid on top. There's no clear direction or fundamental understanding. And yeah, this is exactly the point, right? Where the brushstrokes for the body, which are supposed to be blocking things out, they're all like randomly wiggly and wobbly. There would be some shape language towards the blocking, so it actually makes sense. This is a TikToker, Jake Don't Draw.
On there. I've worked from this Velasquez a handful of times because there's so much to learn from it. It's one of the best portraits I think that's ever been painted. There's a total mastery of values here. That's how light or dark a shape is, and edges, how those shapes interact with each other. Velasquez is a master at both, and he makes it look so easy, which is another level of mastery. There's number 4. Get a goatee on there. That's an easy brushstroke. What I'm doing here isn't as
I think this is like a very fun concept. Only 29 brushstrokes.
random as you think. I have a box. This is the front of the box in light, and here's the side of the box. And now I'm going to carve into this box another plane. Let's zoom out. I think we're actually to solve a few more big forms like the lips and chin area. 25, 26, 27 to get the silhouette and the rest of the head in there. I don't know if that was a good idea, but I think that when I zoom out, this is going to start reading really well. And here's 30. Man, I always feel like we're so close on these, but just a little bit too far away. Let's see how long that took me. 30 minutes? Oh my God. Am I either becoming a beast at painting? Or this is just really bad? Let's zoom out. I think we're actually like so close in so many ways. I just need to...
But this blockage actually makes sense because you can see each brush stroke is blocking a shape on the face, the background, the goatee, etc., so that it actually adds up to how the piece is supposed to look like. And a non-account says, that's what I thought too. Their defense being oil painting technique was odd because I've used oil painting IRL. Everyone definitely has different methods of drawing, but it was such an odd thing because they're doing their illustrations digitally. So why can't they undo it and draw out the shapes? Which is exactly my question too. At the end of the day, this is Zorak's statement. I see all the messages and concerns being raised. I need some time to put together a proper response and show my process. Please give me space. I'll address everything soon as well with the time lapse and so on. Thank you. Well, we have an update because some more information came out. This was posted September 7th, yesterday. I was at Disneyland. Lucid writes, Zorax admits to using generative AI. Thank you to Nefrith for the final nail. So there's a conversation that's happening in Discord between Zorax and Nefrith, and a lot of it's in Thai, but we can translate it. Zorax says, okay, I might actually paint over an AI image of Mikhail on that one. Mikhail is the Pope character. Nefrith says, oh, okay, well, I'll help as much as we can, offering to help Zorax fake a speed paint to make it look legitimate. Zorax says, this is what I need. Time. And Nefrith says, I think it's better to tell them to calm down and then we'll talk about it later. Zorak says, I'm the effing villain. I'm so sorry, man. But then it's not like I'm fully one because I do draw other works. But I really want everyone to stop bothering me first. Let me fake the speed paint first. I know this makes me a shitty person, but ... And Nefrith says, man, I mean, it's okay if you're actually non-drawn the other pieces too. I mean, it's fine for me. You're the one who inspired me to get my stuff together. So it's bad. So then this is the second screenshot. And it's in Thai, but if you translate it, Nefrith says, by the way, I'd like to know, which AI do you use? And Zorak says, Niji Journey? I don't know what this is. Mid-Journey? Nefrith went undercover pretending to be a friend of Zorax and was discussing faking a speed paint to try to make Zorax look like a legitimate artist in the DMs. And in the DMs, Zorax admitted that they were going to try to fake a speed paint to make themselves seem legitimate. And a commenter says, this is an insane development, but I expected as much. Them trying to buy time was weird since the beginning. Any artist would be scrambling for proof of their process right away. I feel bad for those who got scammed, and so much money too. And the reason being is because Zorax offers commissions on VGen. This is a screenshot of their VGen page. Now, don't send hate to any parties, but you can see they have a bust-up character portrait they're offering from $150 plus, and historical paintings offering from $300 plus, which is why this is a big deal. A lot of times people are like, why are you calling out people who use AI? Let them do their thing. Because people will then do this and scam other people by using AI, claiming they're a legitimate artist, and people purchase the work thinking it's handmade by somebody who put their blood, sweat, and tears into it when they are scamming you, going to Midjourney, typing in a prompt, and giving you something that you didn't pay for and that you massively overpaid for because it didn't cost them anything. And you might be like, well, shouldn't it be so obvious it's AI, blah, 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 blah. A lot of people who are not artists or who don't have a trained eye to recognize AI can't tell. It's easy if you have a knowledge already of a subject like art, right? To assume that everybody can see things the way you see things. And that's just not how life works. Especially painted over AI, it makes it super hard because then there's legitimate aspects in it. So that's what makes it even harder to tell. I consider myself pretty decent at judging whether something is AI or not, but sometimes I don't want to make videos about it if I'm not fully certain, you know? So after all of this was, I guess, a DM that Zorax sent Lucid, where Zorax wrote, "Hi Lucid, I want to sincerely apologize to you. You are right to expose what I was doing. I understand why you did it, and I shouldn't have hidden or denied anything. I take full responsibility for my actions, the AI usage, the things I said in private chats, and all the mistakes I made. I know I hurt others and created distrust, and I'm truly sorry for that. I'm stepping back now to reflect, detox, and rebuild myself honestly. I'll take care of financial responsibilities, be transparent with VGen, and delete my accounts to start fresh. Thank you for being honest and doing the right thing, even if it was difficult. I hope one day I can show through my actions I've learned and changed." And Zorax posted this on their page. "Hi everyone, this is Zoe. I want to openly and sincerely apologize for recent actions and words that were inappropriate and disrespectful. I take full responsibility. I used AI as a base for coloring without being transparent about it. I know this created distrust and disappointment, and I should have been honest from the start. I will clear all outstanding payments and fully disclose everything to VGen. This is part of taking responsibility for my actions. After that, I will delete my accounts and start fresh. This isn't to run away, it's to reflect, detox, and rebuild trust through transparency and integrity. I hope this serves as a lesson to anyone considering similar actions. Please don't. The consequences are real, and the impact on trust and reputation is very serious. To everyone I've disappointed, I am truly sorry. I will focus on growth, accountability, and doing better moving forward. Thank you for reading." That is wild at the end of the day. What are your thoughts on this entire thing? People are like 50-50. Some people were like, yeah, you know, big ups to you for like owning up to your mistakes, etc. A lot of other people were like, you're all of a sudden this accountable because you got caught and you were victimizing other people and gaslighting people, being like, how dare you think it's AI? Do you think I'm that stupid to paint over AI? So very interesting. At the end of the day, I hope they can learn and be better. It sounds like they at least want to try. And I mean, while what they did is definitely not okay and very deceptive, people should be given the opportunity to like try to be better. So it just depends on their future actions from here. So it'll be interesting. I'm curious on your thoughts, and the way they were caught, wild. So the Zorax situation has concluded. Did you expect this to be the ending? Did you think they were going to make an explanation? I definitely didn't expect them to be caught in this way with a friend, in quotes, I guess, right? Essentially tricking them into admitting the fact that they did use AI. But don't send hate to any parties involved. Hopefully they can learn, improve, and be better. Is this a legit artist that has been falsely accused of tracing? Or is this somebody who has been scamming people with $120 commissions? Let's dive in. And before we get into this, disclaimer, please don't send hate to any parties involved. And my background looks funky. I'm traveling and I'm in Japan right now, so that's why it looks like this. So this kicks off with this post by user Tiro Pancake, writing, "Asami Arts is tracing AI. This is an account with nearly 100,000 followers who has been taking dozens of commissions through VGen. Here is the evidence." And I hope that VGen strengthens their protocols for verification. This is not an isolated case and will keep happening. Sadly, there is not much else I can do besides spread awareness. So attached is a 42-page Google Doc breaking down this artist account, highlighting that there's a big issue at the moment with artists tracing AI, charging hundreds of dollars on VGen. And the doc is regarding user Asami Arts, formerly Drawing Asami. This document to me reads very fair, as in it feels like Teru is trying to cover both sides, highlighting elements like how it's frustrating to have people constantly doubt your artistic skill, but in this document, how they're going to show that they believe the odds of Asami tracing AI are very high. And they highlight some red flags with AI accounts. One, the account being very new, joining Twitter or social media after 2021, because that's when Gen AI was popularized. Having no other social medias really associated with that account. This is not the case with Asami Arts, as they joined August 2024, but they previously had an account called Drawing Asami, joined 2022, that was suspended. 2, art constantly being deleted when somebody pointing out there are AI elements, or comments mentioning AI are ignored and hidden. Personally, as somebody who has looked at a lot of these like AI accounts, that one's a big one. Like they will have the word AI like blocked and flagged, and then any mention of AI gets yeeted. And of course, if you're an artist, it's frustrating having somebody accuse you constantly of your work being AI if it is legitimate. But this is something you will see with accounts that do use AI and then conveniently also have a Patreon. Any mention of AI gets yeeted. 3, sudden multiple changes in art style in a short amount of time. And this doc highlights that it's normal for artists to study and experiment, but drastic changes with no prior experience is a bit of a red flag. And for Asami Art's case, a lot of the previous art has been deleted because they suddenly switch art styles from popular Japanese artists who have AI models trained with their art without consent. and 2 artists of this being Ixie and Pote. Again, a sudden jump in art skill. For example, an amateur digital artist suddenly mastering anatomy and color within a few months. The doc also adds that with this, you might see a sudden jump in anatomy, but line work will still be shaky because no amount of copying can suddenly improve your line work skill, and refusing to provide proof, deflecting, and ignoring people. And sometimes they'll provide a small amount of evidence that will later get deleted. This person was invited to draw together in a browser-based Canvas website, but their response was that they don't have to prove themselves to anyone or convince anyone. So, point number 1 is time-lapse inconsistencies. The time-lapses are from Clip Studio Paint, where you can export time-lapses in 15, 30, or 60-second lengths, and the files were converted to MP4. And one thing that the doc notes is the fact that in the time-lapses, both of these being April 2025, there is no sketch at all. The work is just being drawn straight out the gate. And Clip Studio Paint is not like Procreate where it auto records, like you have to manually click record. Sometimes people forget, like I forget all the time. And the doc highlights the fact that, sometimes you might see an artist not have a sketching process in their Clip Studio Paint time lapse because they forgot to hit record, but you can see like a tiny faint outline of the sketch they're referencing for their line work. To out the gate one-shot perfect line work with 0 sketch, even the most seasoned artist, for the most part, will need a sketch or some sort of like rough blocking of shapes and stuff like that to work on, because you will not get the line work perfect out the gate. It's rare, turbo rare to see that. And the doc adds, this means Asami is lining without a sketch to guide her, without corrections, perfectly placing every line without hesitation. And it also cites that Clip Studio Paint allows you to make a private line work layer that won't be shown, which features this video from Unji Art, which I have actually shown in previous videos as well. So the way Unji explains it is that you can go and make a layer and then select that layer and then convert that selection to a selection layer. So basically it will look like this, and then you can color drop or sketch over it, do whatever you want to do. And then once you get to the time lapse, that selection layer doesn't actually show up. So below are time lapses from AI tracers. Both of these individuals I've actually covered on my channel as well, but you can see the similarities in the way their time lapses look is also something that you can see with Asami Chan's work, where again, they basically work out the gate with no sketch, very minor, if any, adjustments to the work. And again, big disclaimer, if you're somebody that works with no sketch or minimal sketching or everyone has their own art process. This is also just something that you will see with AI tracers. But just because you do that doesn't mean you trace AI. And then there's also a December 2nd update with time-lapse comparisons. So this is the video in question. So on the left here, you can see traced time lapses. So on the top right, the alleged tracing from Asami-chan. The bottom is Mashiro, who's basically, we've already confirmed, has traced AI, right? And then on the right are time lapses from various legit artists that have given permission. And you can see with all of the various artists that have been vetted, there is a lot of like working, manipulation, redo, adjustments, whatever, and sketching that they have in their speed paints that you don't see in these AI tracers, where they're just one-shotting it straight out the gate, no sketch, nothing. Everything is immediately perfect, exactly where they place the brushstroke. And the doc highlights that on October 8th, Asami posted a new time-lapse and then deleted the 2 old time-lapses on October 9th, which is again kind of interesting because, people have different reasons as to why they want to delete things, but typically if something is legit, you wouldn't have a reason to delete it. And VGen apparently contacted Asami for proof of art not being traced on October 8th. And Asami said that there's a few time lapses and work in progresses on her account. And when she was questioned about how she did line work without a sketch, she says, practicing with beautiful lines after without sketches and thick outlines would make you proud to do it yourself, but people tend to misunderstand. I posted a new video and I hope it answers your questions. Taro writes that they thought that English wasn't Asami's first language, but in other writing, it looks like she's more fluent. So it's kind of an intentional non-answer. And the exchange on VGen clarified, just to be clear, let me know if I understood properly. The Clip Studio Paint time-lapse without a sketch is because you have 8 years of experience. So being able to line without a sketch is due to professional skill you've developed. That's amazing. And Asami says, yep, that's right. Actually, I erase and redo my drawings many times, but Clip Studio only records the video from where you last left off to speed up the drawing process. Many artists do that. And as I said, my computer's problematic and I don't even know how to access old Photoshop files and drawings. Unfortunately, I lost my drawings from 2017 onwards, and as you can imagine, a lot of time has passed. And the doc adds, this is not true. After you press the record time-lapse button, the only thing you can do is export it or press record time-lapse again to stop recording. And Clip Studio Paint will give you a warning if you try to do that. I draw in Clip Studio Paint, as far as I know, from my experience, if you redoing stuff back and forth like that, like it will show if you're erasing stuff and then putting it back. Now, this is the third time lapse, and the doc adds that this isn't a Clip Studio Paint time lapse. This is a Procreate time lapse, and we already know in Procreate you can hide layers and trace over it. And the doc adds that they don't consider Procreate to be a solid time lapse evidence. And again, the doc adds, even if you look at this Procreate time lapse, she never goes back to erase, adjust, or correct anything while sketching, lining, or shading. Again, out the gate, it's perfect. And what I think is interesting is here we have the Procreate time-lapse too, right? The Procreate one. Suddenly there's a sketch. Suddenly out the gate, there is a black sketch that's very basic, and then she goes in and half cleans it up in red and then lines over it. But like, if your art process is one where you are 8 years of experience, out the gate, perfect line work, like that is your art process, that is completely fine to you, right? Why suddenly start sketching? You know what I mean? Like if you always sketch in your work, you will then continue to basically sketch in the future. But then if this is the way you draw and this is like unique to you and you're satisfied with it, why suddenly change it? Except the change didn't change anything because the art is the same. It's not like she's experimenting with a new style, which is why to me this is very confusing. Because again, especially with the Clip Studio Paint time lapse, if you did a sketch and you lowered the opacity of it and drew over it, it will show. You cannot hide layers in it unless you do that like selection layer system. Which then again, if you are drawing it in the legit way, why would you need to do that? You could just lower the opacity of your sketch and draw over your sketch. And the doc adds that they believe showing layers is proving an artwork isn't AI generated, but in this case, the accusation is the fact that Asami traced AI, so obviously there will be layers from the tracing. So what do you do when the time lapses are weird? How do you prove your art is legit? So on October 10th, it was forwarded that Teru would be willing to draw with Asami on mangban.com, which is like a site where you can draw like scribble.io, and that it functions like any other art program, and that if she isn't tracing, she would have no problem drawing with another artist at the same time. And Asami says, I don't need to keep proving myself over and over again because of what people say about me. I won't take part in witch hunts or hate culture that starts when people put themselves above others. The internet is a free place and you're free to believe whatever you want. If my previous time lapses didn't convince you, nothing I do now will. And honestly, I don't have to convince anyone. Throwing accusations online and demanding proof is ridiculous. You'd probably say, see, no reply, it must be AI, if I didn't respond. And if I block you, you would say the same. But no one owes people like that any explanation. You don't have to commission me or follow me. And the doc basically states that you don't owe Teru anything, but you do owe clients clarity as to whether they're paying for legit work or something that is traced. And my personal 2 cents, again, I feel like if you are a legit creator and you're in a situation where there are these like accusations floating around you, these accusations might potentially like impact business for you, right? So wouldn't the natural gut reaction would be to like clear your name as quickly as possible so that you can prove you're legit and then, get rid of all of those accusations and then we're all good. I just think that like, I don't owe you anything. Like, sure, I guess you don't owe the creator of this doc anything, I suppose, but it's just interesting because I feel like you don't gain anything from this. Like basically, I feel like if you're a legit artist and you were to do the draw along, you only have things to gain from it. And the doc adds that the day before they saw Asami's reply, somebody reached out to another artist that was suspected of using AI, and they gave a very, very similar response of, I don't need to prove anything, blah, 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 blah. And the doc adds that that person isn't taking commission, so this doc isn't about them. And on the right is a response from another artist by the name of Foam or Misoi. I've already covered them on my channel. They've basically also been confirmed for tracing AI. I always say basically, and some of you guys are like, oh, Kat, why are you always in the middle of the road? Because unless there's like a genuine smoking gun, for reasons that I don't want to get in trouble, we keep it alleged. Next part, refusing to provide evidence when questioned. And it highlights the fact that in Asami's media tab, a lot of old art that was suspected of being AI is suspiciously missing. And their old account drawing Asami was suspended, and even back then in 2024, there were suspicions of AI being used. And here are screenshots from people suspecting it. This is artwork she posted in May 2024. This one, again, people were suspecting of being AI already, but beyond that, the doc highlights how the art style is drastically different from her art style today. Next up, we have AI errors in the art. And this one, to me, is so funny. The doc goes like 3 pages into this. This just cracks me up, okay? So this is a piece of a character licking a gun. And just take a look at the gun. Look at where the muzzle is, okay? The doc cracks down on this, and I too am honestly just flabbergasted because, come on. If you're gonna draw something that you have no experience drawing, and you are an artist who allegedly is capable of drawing at this level with this anatomy and this level of rendering, I would assume if there's something you don't know how to draw, you would look up a reference photo and then draw it. That would be my assumption. Basically, in no way would you look up a reference photo for a pistol and it would give you a gun like this, because the barrel, like where the bullet comes out of, is obviously supposed to point at the other person. It is not on the back of the gun where it faces you, because what's gonna happen, you pull the trigger and then you're gonna go bye-bye. So for common sense reasons, the ejection part would be in the front, not in the back. And this is not something you need a reference photo for. This is something you think for like 1 second and then you get this. Unless you are tracing something like a generated image that generated it all wonky for you and then you didn't do any thinking. I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna follow what it says. And then it looks like this. And Asami tweeted, I'm still not good at drawing weapons, so sorry if there's any weird parts. I looked at the reference and tried drawing something like it. Again, I mean, I play Valorant, so correct me if I'm wrong, but like, I don't know where you would find a reference photo that looks like this, to be honest. This to me is just astronomically the most damning. You either get one of two things. Either you traced something to get this gun, or secondly, you didn't think. I mean, hey, we've all made really, really dumb mistakes, okay? I've done so many dumb things in my life that I literally look back and I'm like, how in the world did I draw this? Why did I think it would be drawn like this? You know, we've all done that. But this is definitely not gonna help your case if there are already AI suspicions. But yeah, the doc basically goes to highlight in every reference photo ever, you will find a back that looks something like this and not with the barrel pointing back at you. Next up, we have hair and clothing errors. So here we have some artwork. And again, there's some interesting things happening. So here is an art piece. The character is wearing like a sweater top essentially, and the top connects to nothing. Obviously, the way it would work, right, is it would connect under the armpit here, and all of that is missing. We then have, again, the underwear, and there's like a side strap coming down from the underwear, which is just odd. Just another thing is, like, if you were to tie a bow here, right, there would be tails hanging down from the bow, and that's just not there, which is interesting. Maybe the artist forgot it. It could happen, right? Again, there's like hair inconsistencies happening. And then there is this piece. The hair physics just makes no sense. And this is something you will see in their artwork. There is all this hair coming from behind the elbow, and there is nowhere the hair is coming from. So the hair is coming out of the elbow, out of the arm, which is odd. It should be like visible here too. Same with back here. This part just does not make any sense because, you know, I think it's cool to draw hair like draping over your arm like that. The hair is supposed to be attached at one point onto your head, right? On one, either the top or the bottom, part of it has come out of your head. This is just draped on the arm like it's a ribbon. The start and the end hang over the arm. No part of it is attached to the head. And again, more of like ropage happening here. This is, yeah, where is it going? And you can again see more of the same hair errors here. And it highlights that in some of the pieces like this one, there's like too many JPEG artifacts, so it's hard to tell if it's AI generated or not. Again, here we have just more errors in hair. This hair behavior, we have hair coming out and then looping back into hair again. If you've seen my videos, you already know this is something that AI will do. They will have hair that will start, loop out, and then connect back into the head, which is just not how hair behaves. Here, again, maybe this is artist error, human error, but we have a pink undercut of the hair, right? Lower highlight of the hair is pink, and it's just like chunks of the baby blue, baby lavender part of the hair is also pink, but like middle chunks of it. Here again, we have like noodly things happening with the hair, more hair noodles. It's just interesting because like artists obviously make human errors, and just because you made like one mistake with the hair does not mean you used AI, obviously. But because it's happening consistently across so many pieces, it gets a bit suspicious. Here we have a character with a tail, except the character has 2 tails in this piece. Now this piece, the dog highlights that they suspect this entire piece might be AI generated and not traced. That shadows don't match the source, or there's different hues, hair chunks aren't coherent. The ribbon has 3 bows coming out of it instead of 2. So here, as you can see, right, the ribbon, there's supposed to be 2 tails coming out of the ribbon, right? The beginning and the end of the string. And this one has 3. There's like a third one here. This one, okay, the one to me that's very damning for this piece is the fact the hair goes straight through the eyelid and comes right back out. Here we have part of the bangs. As you see, it goes straight through the eyelid and then out of the eyelid, covering the white of the eye somehow, which is just odd. Some artists will have a style where the eye will sit on top of all the hair. It's just part of the art style, but the eye white will also sit on top of the hair. And here it's just not, that's just not a thing. Just look at the shadows, right? The hair is doing a lot of the noodly draping thing again, which is like fun. You know, I think it's really pretty when humans do it, but none of the shadows are following any of the logic of the hair at all. Here we have a strap. It goes under the armpit instead of going over the shoulder, which is where it's supposed to go. And then here there's some hair chunks, and the doc says you could argue that the hair is wet. Next up is critical design elements for characters that are wrong. And the doc highlights that a lot of times with people who trace AI or generate things with AI, they will have most of their art featuring characters with complex outfits in something simple, like a swimsuit or so, like a white shirt or something. And that when they do draw them in lore accurate outfits, that it's often drawn incorrectly. And it highlights here this piece of Aurora, where Aurora has a detailed character sheet that's available online. And yet somehow, like, there are a lot of design element errors and just errors that look more consistent with AI. Here again, this one's interesting. Just like the rim of the goggles on the top of the head are just like uneven. The left and the right don't match, and they are symmetrical on the ref sheet. And then other elements like the jewel design around the neck is just completely wrong. These design inconsistencies are found across characters, like with other characters as well. And the doc highlights that maybe, you know, liberties were taken as the artist to put the character in a different outfit, but still that there are too many errors or like differences between the actual character design and the artwork that it's just odd. So again, more errors. And the doc again adds, artists still might interpret hairstyles in their own unique way to suit their style. It's not always indicative of AI tracing. And this is something that I do feel with this doc. This document gives a lot of liberties as you're going through. It's like, hey, here, I just want to acknowledge, right, that like human artists will take liberties, they will do things differently, but here's why I think in this specific instance, it's not that. So this part of the doc highlights how in 2022, AI struggled to blend character outfits correctly, but now AI is a lot better at matching outfits to character designs, and it's due to low-res or low-rank adaptations, where large-scale models can be adapted to specific uses. So here, this is right before Saba's debut, June 28th, and right before some teasers were posted, and low-res started popping up starting around like June 24th with inaccurate outfits because Saba hadn't debuted yet. The doc adds that on June 25th, Asami Arts posted a Saba fan art, and that it would not be possible for any fan art to fully match official designs because at that point, it was not revealed yet. It was revealed 3 days later. And the doc highlights the reason I suspect this artwork is traced from AI is not because the design doesn't match Saba, but I find it hard to believe this was their own design prediction by June 25th. When the following teaser had been posted June 15th. So my interpretation of what this doc is basically saying is that Asami's artwork of Saba before Saba's debut suspiciously seems to look like the Laura models of Saba, you know, with the little bow in the hair and then this specific dress, which again, in the 2 little teasers that were posted were not things that were visible in the teaser. So this isn't like the teaser had this, which is why Asami drew it. So it's a bit interesting. And then once Saba's debut happened, a bunch of Laura's popped up again, and they were uploaded around June 28th. On June 30th, Asami uploaded this art piece. This again highlights that with Asami's artwork, there are again some character design inconsistencies, like tail position and length. And this doc adds that Laura's can be fused together. So you can have a Saba outfit Laura and an Ixie style Laura. And the doc adds, who is Ixie? An artist whose illustrations have been used without permission to train multiple AI Lauras, and it's the style Asami has begun using recently. The doc continues, art style changes are sudden and old art is deleted. Asami has changed styles many times and wiped galleries on multiple occasions to hide this. This was October 6th, a screenshot of their Pixiv, and this is October 11th. And the doc adds that they don't find artists deleting a lot of art suspicious because, you know, perfectionist, whatever, if it's not perfect to you, you might want to delete it. But the concern begins when the art or evidence, like time lapses, are deleted only shortly after comments started pointing out AI elements. And the doc again adds it's completely okay for artists to experiment with different styles, and that itself is not indicative of AI use. But unless you're a pro, it's not easy to switch or emulate styles so quickly, as in within less than a month, with no in-between practice at all. And conveniently, these styles all happen to be from notable Japanese artists. So the current style is based off IXI. So this is Asami Art's work from July 2024. This is IXI's AI Laura, which was uploaded April 28th, 2024. And this is IXI's original work, November 2020. And the doc adds that in respect to IXI, they're not going to be linking any more of their artwork going forward, but that other people on Twitter, and here are some screenshots, have pointed out that their art style looks really similar to IXI. And here another commenter adds, it also looks like Pote's art as well. And the doc adds, important to note that the art style change needs to happen after Allura was made and uploaded online. And that if the art style change happened before this happened, they wouldn't necessarily suspect an artist of using Allura based on somebody else and then tracing it. Because, you know, the chicken and the egg, right? The Laura had to come first for you to trace it, unless it's an offline model that the artist used. The doc goes on to say that the Laura on the right was one that was created August 2024, a couple months after the June 2024 style change. However, there has been IXI Lauras dating all the way back to 2023. So again, here is a Laura from April 28, 2024, based off of IXI, which is, again, before the art style shift. And some of the artworks recently have poses that are resembling IXI's Laura to an extent. And the doc adds that since AI learns from real art, they try not to focus on pose similarities unless the match is close, like these two. And then here we have two very similar poses as well. And again, the left is Asami's work. Next up, we have Pote, who is the style that Asami's art has been allegedly based off from 2023 to mid-2024. And allegedly, Asami is also following both IXI and Pote on Blue Sky and Pixiv. Here is a post that Pote had posted on Twitter telling people to stop distributing AI named after them. On the right is Pote's art style, and on the left is Asami Art's work from January 2024. So again, left to right, we have May 2024, and then June 2024, August 2024. And here you can see the rapid shift in art style from art that really resembles and looks reminiscent of Pote's art, and then suddenly the style shifts dramatically. And the doc adds, the reason to believe there might be AI tracing comes from the fact there are multiple AI elements in backgrounds. And in most instances, the background is blurred to hide elements. Here you can see with this piece, this part of the face here, there's blurring happening, and there's artifacts cutting into the hair, as well as we have a zoom in of the floor, and the floor looks really funky. This floor is giving me very AI vibes. And then here are more close-ups of backgrounds that have aspects that are reminiscent of AI. Like again, we have windows with odd frame behavior, a cake with 2 strawberries and a candle, but the candle is inserted like into both strawberries. And the doc adds that maybe you could argue the fact that the backgrounds are AI generated, but the characters are hand drawn. But the switch from Pote to IXI style was just as sudden as the jump in skill before Pote style, which leads them to believe the characters are traced as well. And here again, another AI background with the really wobbly metal fencing. I mean, for me, it's just a bit confusing because it's twofold, right? One, if you're going to AI generate backgrounds to paint over or grab backgrounds from the web to then draw over and try to pass it off as your legit work, this already is not a great look in my personal opinion. And then if you are doing something like that, I personally may not put it past you to also have done some sort of manipulation generation or whatever for the character itself. Because you could just, I don't know, not draw a background at all if it's something you don't want to draw, right? Or you feel that it's something outside of your skill set. So the doc adds, again, a re-emphasis on the fact that, you know, the chicken and the egg, they would only suspect a tracing off of a Laura if the Laura existed before the art style shift happened. And it cites that Pote tweeted about AI infringement all the way back in April 2023, and the earliest model they could find dates back to March 2023, which could also generate backgrounds. And they believe that Asami started tracing AI around that time period. So one of Teru's followers actually commissioned Asami multiple times back in 2023, and amongst these commissions, the one with Pote style dated back April 12th, 2023. So you can see this is from March 2023, this one is from April 12th, 2023, and this one is from June 6th, 2023. The doc continues, the improvement rates in a single month from beginner artists only became so common after 2022 with the first wave of AI. And they've linked a pic Pixiv. So here we have a Pixiv of an artist showcasing their art progress from 2000 up until 2019. And here you can see they have, periods where you would say maybe the art improved very rapidly between like the 2 years. But the improvement speed looks expected of an artist, you know? Here we also have, again, like 10-year progress summaries, more progress summaries. But this, again, looks very realistic. Now, the next section covers another artist by the name of Yukura Iku, whose style was used for a small period of Asami's alleged AI generating and tracing. So around May 2024, Asami briefly switched styles from Pote to Ikura's art style before switching to Ixi. And what's interesting is that while Ixi and Ojipote is followed by Asami, Yukura is actually blocked. So here we can see left to right June 2024, May 2024, and then this is Asami's art on the left and Yukura's art on the right. These two, the pose and the concept is really similar. You could argue maybe it's a reference, maybe they're just heavily inspired by Yukura's artwork, which is why their art looks like this. And the doc adds, let's look at Laura's. So at first they could only find a Laura uploaded February 29, but then it's interesting because Teru found a model that was uploaded October 24, 2023. And that again, right, it's possible it was heavily referenced, but once again, there are errors that are very, very similar and reminiscent of AI. Once again, we have the noodle hair. It's looping out and then back into the hair again. And then here are the shoes, and the shoes are interesting because the left anklet does not match the right one at all. And the doc adds, I haven't gone to Asami's art prior to 2023 yet, but I want to share some comparisons of the style change with the same character across less than a year. This is May 2024, May 2024, August 2024. Here we have March 2024, August 2024, January 2025, and then July 2024, September 2024, October 2024, and December 2024. And to be honest, looking at these, this is just, to me, very like interesting, right? Because like very, very good and seasoned artists are capable of mimicking, imitating, and like heavily referencing art styles and interpreting it as their own. But like all of these look like they're drawn by different people, which is why it's so interesting to see. Because if I were to show you, I don't know, like this piece from May 2024 and this one from August 2024 and this one from December 2024, that would be like a 6-month window, 7-month window. None of these 3 pieces look like they're drawn by the same person, but all of them are heavily established in an art style and fully rendered out. And again, like I've said before, typically when you see artists who have pieces like this with a style that is so established, like it's not unheard of for artists to want to switch styles, change things, but you don't often see it happen this rapidly. Next up is incoherent skill improvement. And the doc writes, as observed, there's a constant and very distinct change in styles, but besides that, improvement completely stalls. And the doc adds that they try to ignore errors that could just be like human errors, but there are pieces where the perspective is flawless and other aspects where dynamic pose and anatomy mistakes are very drastic. So here we have one where you can see the leg pose is just very awkward because the hips would have to be really, really wide on this character for this pose to work, which then would not match like the size of the leg. And then here we have text that is just not warping properly with the chest of this character. And the doc adds that if an artist mastered multiple styles in less than a year with a knowledge of anatomy and dynamic poses and 8 years of experience, you would expect them to know how patterns wrap or bend around clothing and how to execute it in their art program of choice. And this piece in question with the text warping was deleted November 29, which again is following the trend of like anything that looks suspicious gets deleted, which, the artists are entitled to delete work. But you will see that this is a trend with artists who have traced AI, is that they'll delete anything that people suspect because, you got to get rid of the evidence, right? So this is their art chronologically starting from 2021. So here you have artwork that they've published on DeviantArt. It's very, very stylized, really cute. All of this hand-drawn. Now we go into 2022, they start experimenting with more of a chibi style. And then this is from August 2022 to September 2022 and then November. And the doc reads, side note, Stable Diffusion released August 2022. And then we get to 2023, and this is where the AI background starts showing up. Yeah, we got a really AI looking building back here. And then we have from March 2023 to April 2023, where as you can see, OG Pote's art style starts showing up. And there is a review on Etsy mentioning that the character doesn't look similar to the reference photo that was given. This sometimes happens if somebody is tracing AI because there is a reference photo given. They'll generate something with AI to try to like draw off of it. But because the reference photo might be very, very hyper specific and AI cannot replicate that, the artist will then not have a thing to trace that looks like it. So they'll do their best and it'll look a bit off the mark. That's not always the case. Sometimes it's just, maybe the artist goofed a little bit, human error happens, but that is a thing. Then we get to 2024, January, February. It says February 2023. I don't know if this means like February 2024 because that's what is the screenshot here. And then November 2024. And then now we're at 2025. And this is again is just so interesting because if you look at this, the art style changes so much. And this is nothing against people experimenting with art styles, but like March 2025 and November 2024 do not look like they're drawn by the same person at all. This is only like a 5-month window we're talking. Like typically when you see an artist improve, even in a rapid speed, you would still see like essences of their old art in their new improvement. This just looks like it's drawn by a different person. And the doc adds that early 2025 posts have all been deleted as of November 29, 3 a.m. The doc adds, do you know what happened before midnight November 28? I emailed Asami. And Teru adds that, after the stuff that happened in October, they thought maybe they were like overreacting. So they took a 2-week break from the doc and emailed Asami to try to clear things up. They didn't expect a reply. And they asked for Photoshop files of any of these 4 artworks seen on the right. Because again, some of these, especially this one at the top left, were ones that were heavily suspected of being traced / completely generated, period. And the doc adds, they knew that artists might not be comfortable sharing Photoshop files, so they mentioned layer screenshots were okay. And they add again, why are these 4 art pieces selected specifically? Well, it's because these ones are the most damning. Because again, some things could be genuine mistakes in artwork and maybe the artist was distracted, tired, or rushing to finish, or all of the above, it happens. Here we have this one, the bell collar on this character, the shading on the right and left just don't match, and then the shadow again doesn't match. The tail design in any of Gura's artwork, none of the tail designs also match. This one, to me, is always the most interesting because if you are an artist that draws the same character multiple times, maybe if there is like a design error in it or whatever, you might just carry it throughout all the pieces, and that's just not seen here. And it highlights, again, the tail design is not consistent. This one is interesting because in this piece, the artwork is sitting like in front of a really, really faint gray frame. You can see, right? But then for some reason, there's the gray frame. This one to me is very damning. Beneath the tail is a shadow. And for some reason, the shadow goes to the right. Do you see this? As if it is a shadow cast from the frame itself. But that's not what's happening. Like the frame is just like a background for the character. It's not actually part of the environment the character is sitting in. And like the way Asami renders the character in front of a frame obeys that logic for every piece except here. And this doesn't seem like a human error, right? And other things, maybe you could say like this stuff behind the knee, which looks really odd, but maybe like they slipped with the brush when they were drawing, or like they were resizing the canvas and their finger touched the canvas and you actually make a brush stroke potentially. This is like something that AI would generate, because AI would interpret the frame as an actual object the character is sitting on and then like draw a shadow for that. And again, this shadow just does not match the tail at all. Again, the tail is curving. And the doc adds, it's hard to determine if these are fully AI or traced because despite being able to zoom in, the images are very JPEG artifact and have a noise layer added on top. And they add, as of November 30th, they never received a reply to their email. Now, the next part that's suspicious is new artworks being uploaded almost every day. They started the doc back in October, took a break, and resumed. So over the course of 57 days, 48 new art pieces were created of their OCs. And on top of the artwork that was publicly posted, there were 12 VGen reviews, which means that's 12 art pieces they completed on VGen. So this brings the total sum of art pieces created in 57 days to over 60. And the doc adds that, is this output normal? No, but it's not completely impossible. And there's some things that could add to speed, like if you draw in a smaller canvas or don't completely draw a background or use a white background. It also highlights the fact that if you've drawn a character for so many times, because this is their OC, you would think there would be consistencies in anatomy proportions, especially in 2 art pieces drawn back to back. And the next one is that AI users don't learn from mistakes. This one to me is also damning because the OC is drawn in a braided sweater and the braids are just different every time. And they also feature characteristic mistakes that AI will make on braids. Here, the braids have like a very open center here. It looks a bit twisty here. Here again, we have this overlap that's a bit odd. And then this sweater, the braids are just all convoluted. It looks like it's braided with like 4 strands instead of 3. As you can see here, we have a double up here and then it just disappears and more oddities with the braid. And then in the third speed paint, as we can see here, the braid is drawn in and it highlights there's only one instance where an area of the braid is redrawn or corrected, but the liner is essentially the same. No adjustments were made. And as you can see, that's how they're drawing the braid. This to me is also a bit interesting because if you look at this, the way they draw the braid, the GIF, right? They draw the braid in like segments, kind of. Like you see here, they draw the second chunk of the braid, the top, the bottom, and then they go up to the middle. I don't know how you guys draw braids, and everyone draws things differently, but I typically will draw braids from the top point of origin, so if it's to your hair, the base of your neck, and then just go downwards. It would just be odd to piecemeal it together, like the second chain, the first chain, the fifth chain, and then the middle ones, and then go like it just does not make because if you do it that way, then the braid ends up looking really uneven. Here, more instances of braids. They just all don't look the same. And again, if you have a very stylized way of drawing it, that's completely fine. But just piece by piece, day by day, the braid just looks different. And the doc adds, what do AI braids look like? Here's an example. And you can see the close-up, the braid is doing all the like wobbly stuff, right? This doesn't follow any like actual logic. The doc adds, so for all the reasons I provided so far, the doc, I believe that Asami's skill jump from 2022 to 2025 is not genuine. It's not impossible, just highly unlikely. Please don't use improvement speed as the only reason to suspect somebody of using AI. There's real artists who practice and study hard and improve at an impressive speed in only 1 to 2 years. And the doc suspects that the reason they've improved so much is just due to money and /or popularity. And they have a request to VGen due to the fact there's multiple tracers on the platform right now. And that accounts have been reported, but it's been 2 months and yet no action has been taken. And they also add, please consider separating AI reports from general platform reports. They add another point about people who trace AI typically oftentimes having AI generated profile photos, and that there is a possibility these 2 images that were used as Asami's profile photos are or were AI generated. This one especially, but these 2 feature the soulless eyes you will see in AI from back in 2022, before I got better at making eyes. And the doc adds, as this becomes so prevalent, I'm afraid in the future, people might wrongfully accuse others, whether in good or bad faith. Please don't resort to hate or threats. Even if something might seem very obvious at first glance, please review things privately first and ask others for a second opinion. The only reliable proof right now is live drawing in the same canvas, like magma, draw pile, etc., with screen capture, as time lapses and recordings can be forged. And to add on to that, I've been seeing now, people have been trying to fake those Twitch streams too, you know, like back in the beginning, I was like, oh, well, like a Twitch stream, you draw it live, that will clear your name. People have been faking that too. So Tiro continues on Twitter, to those who are tracing and trying to hide it, I've noticed a lot of them are digital art beginners. Don't resort to AI. Learning takes time, but it will be more rewarding in the future when you look back and see your improvement. You will learn nothing if you only trace AI. And to Asami, if you even consider replying to this, do know I'm very much aware of AR tracing, so if you record a video of you drawing IRL, it better not just show your iPad screen and your hand holding your pen. That is honestly the ultimate act of deception that only the most desperate people resort to. It's kind of pathetic when somebody is willing to go that far to pretend they're a real artist. So also, this one is a bit interesting. Another person had commented as a reply writing, hey, I skimmed the doc so maybe this was touched on already, but I realized in the time lapses they're indeed tracing over something and it's very barely visible. So here, this is them kind of like upping a contrast to make it look more visible. And it was a bit debated because Tiro feels like this was something due to mobile phone compression because they tried to recreate the results that this user got and they weren't able to. Other people were saying this might be a phone encoding issue because they took a screenshot and tried like filling it with 0% tolerance and nothing came up. So take this with a grain of salt. A lot of people are saying it's just a mobile thing. Now going into this, another user Tenko writes, oh, it's the same person that blocked me when I asked if they were copying Iku Ikura's art style and the entire Iku Ikura website by running it through Google Translate. And this is Asami's card. This is Ikura's card, where you can see about the program. We're currently in a situation where it's easy to accept projects, about consultation, illustrations, official merch, blah, 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 blah. The formatting is also the same with the bracketing. And you can see the wording in Japanese about the schedule. We are currently accepting projects with a production start date of January 2025. About consultations, we accept a wide range of projects. And if you look at their Pixiv, It kind of looked like somebody was copying and pasting the exact same thing. Like all of this, the same emoji, the same captions, all pasted over. Maybe you're not on the fence about was it AI tracing or not AI tracing. They seem to at least have some sort of interesting obsession with at least this artist. So what does Asami have to say about all of this, right? Because of course we have to see the artist side as well. They made this post. It's a drawing of their OC and it says, "Ah, wonderful, a full comedy show." Sorry, I forgot. You prefer the word drama. And it's of their OC kind of like smirking at the screen, which this one is a bit interesting. This is the first for me that I've not seen an artist make a mocking piece after people have put their art under scrutiny for potentially defrauding customers. And this got community noted. This user has recently been accused of tracing AI generated images and selling them on art commissioning site VGen. So Asami then posts, "This drama isn't about AI or art. It's somebody trying to destroy me with lies. Someone who argues with me and acts like judge, prosecutor, and executioner. What you see in the picture is the way this person attacks me. This is who you're supporting. I don't have to prove myself to anyone, but by supporting people like this, you're choosing what kind of person you are. You're doing a witch hunt, but I don't really enjoy tanning." While her own drawings don't even get 1,000 likes, her attacks get thousands. Do you think this is about art? And it's a screenshot of their email, which somebody has signed them up to a bunch of sus websites. Which, I mean, that kind of sucks. I had that happen to me before live on Twitch. I think I was showing my email because, like, I was showing a scam sponsorship email I got and was like, "Hey guys, look, this is a scam. Don't fall for it," right? And then somebody, like, live time signed me up for all of these sus websites. I guess as like a haha. Anyways, don't show your email on stream, guys. Learn from me. Grab a screenshot of it or something. But so that sucks. Like, I feel bad for them, right? That shouldn't happen to anybody. It's like jarring for it to happen. But this response to me is always really interesting. And of course, it's always one where like hindsight's 2020, like no apology will ever be enough. But it's always interesting because like if I had a nickel for every time somebody was accused of tracing AI, and then instead of immediately trying to defend their innocence, instead attacking the other person or playing the emotional victim card, I would have a lot of nickels. I would just put it that way, okay? I would at least be able to buy like a couple bobas with that. This is just interesting, right? Because instead of being like, "I did not trace AI, I would never do that," they're like, "This person's attacking me. I don't have to prove myself. This was a witch hunt. Look at her. She doesn't get enough likes, so she has to like make these tweets." I feel like these AI tracers always be saying stuff like that. And then this was just funny. Taro had posted, "I don't get likes by attacking people. I get likes by drawing boobs." Sorry, that just made me laugh. So Asami then posted this, and it's very long, but bear with me. "Long time ago, when I first opened my Etsy, my art really wasn't good. I even used the first cute picture I found online as my profile image. I didn't even know what AI was back then. And if you look at my old Etsy orders, you can clearly see I never delivered anything in that style anyways. I tried so many styles. I spent a long time experimenting, even copying the styles of artists I admired. Because I was learning and trying to get my own style. I played with 3D posing tools like everyone else, using MMD to understand poses. I tried backgrounds from places like Pinterest or Google because I wasn't good at them yet, like downloading backgrounds from Pinterest and drawing characters on them myself." Which, taking a step back, please don't do that. Please don't download random images off the internet, artworks from other people off the internet, and then draw over it and then claim that it's yours, right? Because like, even if the character you drew is legit, the background was taken from somebody else, okay? Do not do that. I've already talked about another Disney artist who literally yoinked the OG Bambi artist backgrounds and drew his own Bambi on top of it. Still not cool, but I guess now we have an admission here for that. And so Asami continues, "I realized none of that felt like me. And yes, I still don't know how to draw guns. I honestly don't care to. I can look up a reference, but to me, they all look the same. So I just don't enjoy drawing them. Now, I found my own style, something that finally feels like home, and I draw with confidence. Yet, some people love acting like judges or lawyers online, looking for someone to tear down for attention. Sometimes it works on others, but I'm still here. And the reason I've never talked about any of this before is simple. I needed time to see people's true faces. Some choose to follow the crowd without thinking, and honestly, it cleared my space in the best way. I don't regret anything I've done. My responses were exactly what they needed to be. I'm still here. Before speaking, try thinking for a moment. That goes for anyone." So, I mean, I do agree with the tiny bit of sentiment at the end where it's like, yeah, don't take things at face value, do your own critical thinking. But I'm curious about your thoughts thus far. But for me and my tinfoil hat theory, a lot of the things that I've seen in the documents, the time lapses and stuff, it's odd. Odd is like the main word I could use for this, right? Where every artist has their own unique qualms and traits and things they like to do with your artwork. There's always some people who are like the fringe exception to the rule, who will do this and that. You know, maybe you're the exception to the rule and you don't use a sketch and you just draw line work. But Asami is like so many exceptions to the rules that at this point you're becoming a statistical anomaly, or you traced some stuff, you know. That's just what I'm thinking. So Asami attached a speed paint, a 7-minute speed paint of them drawing. And essentially in the 7-minute speed paint, they are drawing their OC flipping you off. Or us, I suppose. This speed paint to me is just a bit interesting because if you look at the speed paint and like the way they draw in the speed paint and the way they sketch, it's not like the other time lapses they've uploaded before. In the other 3 time lapses they have, they go from not sketching at all to they do a really basic sketch and they sketch over half of it in red. And then now we have this sketching where they do a lot more bone work, where they do like the circles for the knuckles and things like that for the hand, which they didn't do in any of their previous speed paints. So I mean, again, maybe I'm just being overly critical because this is a situation where we're trying to see, is this person using AI or not, right? And it's just interesting to see that their sketching process changes so much, but maybe it's because their art style has developed a lot, right? But I just find that to be interesting, especially the way they drew the hand. Because again, in the previous time lapses, they did not draw hands like this. And people are really, again, 50-50 about this. There are some people that saw this 7-minute video and are now like, yep, this clears the air. Asami did not use AI. Like, you guys are all haters. And then there's other people who look at this and say, okay, well, we can see that you didn't use AI in this one art piece, but what about all of the other art pieces that have all of these very odd, interesting, and suspicious elements that seem to really, really be reminiscent of AI? The third party is like, yo, why didn't you post this earlier? Instead, you went on Twitter and antagonized a bunch of people, and now you made yourself look like the a-hole, even though you are now innocent because you've cleared your name with the speed paint. And there is another post from somebody who says that the speed paint is manipulated, where here it looks like they have like a duplication of the art piece kind of like shifted up a little bit, so maybe they're like tracing it but like a little bit lower. That's just a suspicion I saw. I don't know. I was trying to like replicate that screenshot specifically to see if like anything would appear. Nothing comes up when I'm like fudging around though, so I don't know. We'll have to see. It's morning/afternoon now, and there are some updates. Because after the speed paint was posted, again, people on the internet were kind of like, I think this, I think that. There was this post that I thought was really interesting. So this was posted by user Bell, and they write, wait, you're actually right. There is this exchange on Twitter. User Capo writes, as part of the people who exposed Feliel in the past, I can say that this video barely justifies anything. Some lines disappear in some parts, and she can have a green liner below the upper canvas. And the camera doesn't catch as green screen technology, for example. And another user Bell responds, no, wait, you're actually right, because when they're sketching, the RGB slider has the green grayed out. But when they're painting, it's back again. And you can catch it here at the 1 minute and 15-second mark of their video. This is why the video is, in my opinion, and I completely agree, not proof enough, because why is the like exposure and lighting and brightness completely blown out in their video? If you look at the gradient over here, it's completely blown out, with there being this really, really strong curvature you can see here. And what they're talking about is this point right here, where you can see in the RGB slider, right, where we have red, orange, yellow, green, the green is like brown. It's this like really musty color. It's super desaturated and darkened. And then once we get to the teal blue next to it, it's suddenly super bright again. And then just like their screenshot has it, the moment you get to the coloring part, right, the green is suddenly green again. And suddenly the colors are no longer super blown out. Because again, if you look at like the sketching phase, especially, the lighting of the video is so cooked. If you see here, the exposure is jacked up to the absolute high heavens. And like not everyone will have a camera to film on to get like the one-to-one colors, but somehow everybody who posted a video proving they didn't trace, that later also was caught tracing, all of their proof videos are giga blown out in the video quality. But to show more about what I'm talking about here, this is like an example video that I filmed on my hotel bed, okay? Where here, you know, I drew a frog in like neon green and then went over in red to like sketch over it. There's many ways you can do this, but in Premiere Pro, there's like a couple ways. You know, we can go to curves here, hue and saturation, color select the green, and then just drop the saturation to Narnia. And then we go back over to hue and luma, that same green, and then we can adjust the brightness of this as well. So we can kind of like turn this up here. And then luma and saturation. But yeah, as you can see here, I've made the green frog outline white. And then now if you see, when you're drawing over it, oh wow, you can't see the green anymore. And then to like make it blend better, you would go under, basic correction and then, turn the brightness up all the way so you can't see the fact that it's green. And then if we start here, it looks like I'm starting with a blank canvas. But do you see what I mean? Well, let me go back here. Do you see how the RGB section is now super blown out with like this really sharp cut in the curvature? This is because I was adjusting the colors of the video. But you can see there's the hidden frog layer. And then to maybe make the green look less visible, you might go under, I don't know, creative, and then we just desaturate the video a little bit so the green isn't as prominent, and then color correct, and yeah, right? So now that I've shown you how to do it, which I'm always like, I don't know, 50-50 about this, because it's like, on one hand, it's like, trust me, bro, isn't necessarily enough proof to be like, hey, something is wrong here. But then also partially it's like showing it, like, I don't know, people might look at it and be like, well, this is now a tutorial on how to do this. But honestly, if you want to go deceive people with like these videos, no matter what, you will go on the internet and look up a tutorial how to green screen out a green sketch layer, right? Like, this is why, going back to the video, I personally do not think this sketching video is enough proof to justify that some oddities weren't done in the process of their painting. Because yes, do we see their hands drawing stuff? Absolutely. Is it also really, really weird that in the sketching layer, the colors are completely blown out, with the green section being desaturated to absolute hell? And then suddenly, in the coloring portion of the video, everything is perfect again. So some people are like, oh, maybe it's like a video glitch or like a camera glitch, whatever, that caused this. To me personally, you cannot be this many statistical anomalies, honestly, to where you have line art that looks like this, perfect out the gate, and you say this is due to your 8 years of amazing art experience. So if we do take you at your word for this, right, you are the statistical anomaly in this case, and then you are also the statistical anomaly in having all of these AI-looking errors in a lot of the art pieces, and you are one of the statistical anomalies in the fact that your art style changed 10,000 different times over the course of 3 years, but every single time your art style changed, there is like a 1 month gap in between at most, and the new art style is suddenly perfect and also very, very reminiscent of very popular Japanese artists. And also you're suddenly the statistical anomaly in the fact that you have perfect line art out the gate every single time, and you are very adamant about this, and then suddenly in your newer time lapses, you sketch. And you correct your work, and you re-edit your work. Like, and then in this final proof, conveniently your camera bugged out and desaturated the green, but only on the sketching layer. Like, we can give benefit of doubt, but this is a lot of benefit of doubt at this point. And to be honest, unless there is like full proof, as in they do the magma draw along or something else of the sort, personally, I'm not buying it. Especially given the fact that when called out for tracing, they immediately went on the defensive, which some people do, but every single tracer that we've caught has done that. Where instead of being like, wait guys, I swear I'm innocent, they go and attack the other person and are like, I don't need to prove anything to anyone. I don't know. So with this new update, again, don't send hate to any parties involved. Please do not do that. I'm just curious about your thoughts on this. Do you think that it's just a legitimate artist that's been falsely accused by a big hater on Twitter? Or do you think there is very reasonable suspicion about their art process and the potential of their art process not being legit? I'm curious about your thoughts. So anyways, if you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Apologies for the weird setup and stuff. Your girl is traveling and I'm in Japan right now, which is why the setup is a little funky. I have an Etsy with digital art and a coffee with free resources, and I also am trying to get my Instagram to 100K. And finally, I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays at 6 p.m. PST. So I hope to catch y'all there or in another video. Peace.